Just let me know when you want me to talk.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another GamerGate book interview. Today, I'm joined by the one, the only, the Lieutenant Sarge, a fellow YouTuber and live streamer from back in the GamerGate days. How are you doing today, Sarge?
I'm a little sleepy, but I just had some coffee, so I'm doing okay. My morning's just getting started, and this is a good way to kind of start it off, getting through this interview. So,
Well, I'm sure it's going to be a beautiful day, Sarge. It will.
yeah. I was gonna say I was actually surprised you wanted to interview me because I was like, man, I don't really know. Like, I was not like a big figure in Gamergate or anything. Like, I just kind of like was like hosting streams and talking about it. But I figured this would be, a nice little fun way to kind of get back into the online presence. So I was like, yeah, let's just do it. Why not?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I really did. I reached out to you originally. I'm like, you know what, Lieutenant Sarge, he was like one of the big streamers back then, and obviously you made a couple videos too, like your video where you criticized Extra Credits, a fellow YouTuber who seemed to have gotten the Gamergate conversation quite wrong in your estimation.
Yeah, that video, it wasn't the first video I did on Gamergate. It was like the third or fourth, but it was the first one that got like a lot of attention. And I was like first video on my YouTube career that got a lot of attention. And so everybody was like really, really liking it. I mean, I obviously got some negative comments on that extra credits video from like people that were like against Gamergate or that were like super feminists and stuff, but like everybody was like really liking it. And so I figured, this is the gaming scene, which is where my primary YouTube career was focused on at that time. Why not just talk about gaming right now with the Gamergate, because it was like the big talking point at that time. And I was trying to do videos where people could come in and discuss stuff, and that was why I started doing like streams. And I started meeting a lot of people that way. That's how you and me met. So it was an interesting little era. My but the extra credits video was definitely my biggest contribution to the GamerGate conversation. And then after that, I did like about 10 or so streams where we were talking about it. And God, I can't remember everything that happened. I remember like doing the ones where like people were arguing about like infighting and stuff, and I did a couple streams where we were talking about can people like solve their problems they're at and stuff. So that's basically that. Mostly, I don't really talk about politics anymore as much as I used to back then, especially when it comes to like the gaming scene. I used to argue on like before I got into Gamergate. I used to argue when I was in the military. I would argue with like people that I was on Facebook friends with about politics and religion and stuff. And the the thing that when I got out of the military and I was like walking away from the online scene, I went back into therapy to kind of like get some of my mental emotions in check. And one of the things they said was to get off social media, stop arguing with people. So I just kind of did that about 7 years ago, and then I started coming back into the YouTube scene about 2 years ago after I got on some like medication to help me control like some of my anger issues, and now I've been kind of like just able to balance out a lot of my anxiety that I have from like dealing with like military and stuff. So now I'm kind of like just tiptoeing back into the political scene a little bit, but I don't want to go too far onto this rabbit hole because we can go there for a long time. You're trying to focus on Gamergate, so I figure I'll redirect the conversation that way.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm glad you're back, and I'm glad you're doing a lot better, man.
Thank you.
So hey, do you want to tell me about your Gamergate experience? Well, I guess you can either tell me about your Gamergate experience or tell me what got you interested in talking about this in the first place. What was the spark that was like, I should really cover this?
So I got into Gamergate very late. I was like 3 months behind everybody else. I was watching at that time videos from the Amazing Atheist and Thunderfoot, who were both big prominent YouTubers talking about arguing religion at the time. and Thunderfoot put up a video talking about Gamergate. And around that time, it was when the Anita Sarkeesian videos were starting to be popular, where she was like the, feminism and gaming or whatever. And I thought those videos were cringe, as did like most of my friends. But I didn't think Gamergate was. I thought that's what Gamergate was about. It was just like pushback against those videos. And then I started watching some other videos from like Sargon, and eventually I saw the ones that were from Internet Aristocrat or Mr. Medicare, and those ones were talking about the actual gaming cliques that were using each other to like promote each other, like Zoe Quinn and shit. And I found out about that whole situation, and the Internet Aristocrat videos that were focusing on the conspiracy, as they called it. That was something that I watched, and I was like, "Holy shit! Like these guys are corrupt as hell, and they like use their power to abuse other people, and then go around asking for people to back them up after they get flack from the internet." So this was pretty fucked up. And I was a big fan of Extra Credits at the time, which was also a big gaming channel, and they had been very vocal about defending games, which is one of the videos that I used when I talked about Extra Credits versus Gamergate. They had a video that was like standing up for the medium of games, and games had always been a big part of my life growing up. And when I was in the military, I was games was kind of like the hobby that kind of made me kind of like able to deal with the stress of being in the military. So I was very passionate about games. So when I saw like Extra Credits come out and say they were against Gamergate, like to me that was like them basically becoming hypocrites, because of, they had been staying, like at the time when they first did their video about standing up for the gaming medium, it had been after like Fox News and all these conservative outlets were against making games on war. But then when like the Anita Sarkeesians started coming around and the movie Bob started coming around and shitting on the gaming scene, Extra Credits joined their side, and because they were a bunch of liberal feminist people. And I was just kind of pissed off that they would fucking, say do it one say stand up for the medium over here, but then like you're all a whole bunch of toxic gamers and like neo Nazis and all everything, when the people who were criticizing the Gamergate part, or excuse me, the gaming scene were a bunch of feminists. So that made me angry. And my best friend, um, he had been telling me, instead of arguing with this on like Facebook, which was like, just a private server of like only a few dozen people, instead of arguing it with people on Facebook all the time, why not take it and argue about it on like Twitter and YouTube? So that I did, and I just like over a course of like a weekend, I just did like video took me like 3 days to make, which was the Extra Credits Gamergate video, because at that time I had just been like binge watching videos after videos after videos after of the Gamergate era, and I just put it all together into one big video as a big fuck you to Extra Credits. And I was, very passionate at the time, so I was like kind of like using everything that I had learned at that time as like a big talking point. And, they say one thing here, like Jim Sterling will say one thing here, and then like he'll be like, "Oh, Anita Sarkeesian and the feminists are not out to get you," and then like here's the Young Turks talking about how like a video game just got pulled off of the stores because of online complaining. And I was like, "Oh yeah, so they're not out to get your games after all, right?" It was like those type of things that I was putting into there. And um before making that video, though, I had done some more neutral, kind of passive video streams with a couple of my friends on Facebook, where we just talked about the gaming scene and like Gamergate, and specifically, we were kind of like just sharing our thoughts, and it was not very combative, even though we got into a couple of disagreements. And I had originally, that was my intention, was to kind of just do like a very neutral, let's just talk about our thoughts type of thing. And I had seen people do that with like religion when it comes to like atheists versus Christianity and those type of videos. Some of them would get heated, but then they'd have other ones where they'd have good conversations about changing people's minds. And that was what I was trying to do, was like have a good conversation that made people like reevaluate their positions. But when I saw like it just getting worse and worse and worse as far as the Gamergate scene got, I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just gonna do like a really heated video and go full throttle on it. And then after that got popular, that's when I started thinking, okay, well maybe I can do my original approach. Just have people come on and talk about it. But now I'll do it to like random people on the internet. And then that's when I started just hosting videos and streams where people would just come into a Google Hangout and we'd all just talk. And that's kind of just how I got into Gamergate in general.
From
So,
your experience, were most of the conversations that you were able to engage with good faith conversations where people were really willing to listen and hear each other out?
I mean, there were sometimes there was also people who were very heated and like they had their own baggage against each other. And I don't need to name specific people. I think you know who some of the ones I'm talking about. They would come in and they would like derail the arguments or derail the conversation. But I did have conversations that were pretty uh educational, you know, like for instance, QQ was a guy that like I started following his videos and eventually I got him to come on some of my streams, and I thought like he was a really informative person. He had his own kind of quirky sense of humor. The fact that he was a furry, I didn't hold that against him, but he was a really good guy. There was like, um, what's his name? Daddy Warpig was a guy who I brought into a stream one time, and he was a lot. He had a really big following at that moment when he was talking about like some of the infighting that was happening at the time. Because when I started talking about Gamergate, it was when it had already reached its climax, and guys like Internet Aristocrat had walked away. I don't know if you remember that he had a very public video
Oh yes,
that
it was before
that
I
he was
joined
like,
GamerGate, quote unquote. But yeah.
yeah, yeah. So when I joined and started talking about it, he had already released that video. So I was like, um, kind of like entering into era where everybody was starting to infight. You know, they had like GGHQ versus GG Revolt that was starting to happen. Kotaku in action, those type of things were starting to pop up, and I was like trying to see. I was like, like if people could come back together, by having conversations, so you can like reunite everybody. Because the thing that I noticed was the infighting was like kind of derailing everything. And at that time, I had been thinking if we can get everybody to stop derailing, then like the pushback on the actual people who needed pushback on, which was like the Jim Sterlings and those type of guys, they would, like, sorry, I'm trying to rethink about what I'm saying. The the idea in my head was if you wanted to win this culture war fight, you needed to have everybody rally together. It's like the whole idea that like, once a house is divided, it can't stand anymore. And so I was thinking that if you got people to kind of like hash out their arguments, they could like join forces again. But that was wishful thinking on my part, and it just kind of got everybody turned into their own little cliques, their own little mini factions that all had to fight one another. So I don't know. I don't know. What was your question again?
Just I think it was just pretty open ended. Like, tell me about your GamerGate experience. So,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
well, I do
Well,
want to.
there you
Let's
go.
you talk about the infighting. Actually, it's interesting because I got involved with GamerGate in early 2015. So we probably got involved like around the same time, roughly. And I do remember there were a lot of different people who had so many different directions they wanted to take different GamerGate in. There was like an ongoing disagreements, and I was also much like you, also tried to play that role of being like, okay, let's bring people together. You want things to go this direction, you want things to go that direction. Let's hash it out. Let's have a conversation, and maybe bring everybody together. I thought that was important too at the time.
Yeah.
So we actually kind of played a
Yeah.
similar role in that regard.
Yeah, there. I mean, I remember seeing people, especially when like the SPJ airplay was happening. Guys like Oliver Campbell and a few other people. They were trying to like be leaders in the movement, but you had people who at their core were politically enemies outside of Gamergate, like people who were very right wing and some people who were very liberal. The only thing that they had in common was that they didn't like these corrupt people in the gaming scene using their feminist politics to push a message while simultaneously fucking over people when it came to like their profit and everything. So, that was the thing that united all the gaming scene together, was they were just kind of tired of everybody saying gamers are dead, gamers don't have to be your audience. So it united all these people of different who had their own political beliefs. But once they all started having like discussions about like how to handle Gamergate, everybody was like saying, "Oh, you can't trust this guy. This guy's secretly an SJW, or this guy is right wing or alt right." And that kind of caused the factions to kind of derail. And then, of course, anytime somebody would have an argument, that would lead to drama, and that would create a whole new division between two different groups of people or three different groups of people. And by the time that like the politics scene with like Trump got underway in like 2015, that had a huge impact. I saw a lot of people who were in the Gamergate scene get divided based on the fact that Trump was running for politics, and that was when like you had people who were just like former friends become former friends that became enemies to each other. So, and it just kind of got really really bad at that point. It kind of reminded me of how back during the Occupy Wall Street, you had, and I think, and even Internet Aristocrat brought this point up at one point. Occupy Wall Street, you had a whole bunch of people that were just pissed at Wall Street for fucking over the economy and fucking over thousands of people when it came to the housing market and stuff. And when they came to protest, it showed how many, by the thousands, maybe even a million people might have been there in the city protesting. So you're like, all these people, they're all united together by a single cause. But then once they started interviewing those people, and you realize that a lot of them were like stupid hippies that had no idea what they're fucking talking about. And then some people who were right wingers that didn't want anything to do with like the super liberal people talking about the progressive stack and how to be a good ally to people of color and trans people. They didn't have anything to do with that. So it got the division started forming in Occupy Wall Street, and that was like 2013. So that was kind of like almost a template of what would happen to Gamergate. When you have people who are anonymous and online, have like they don't have any sort of like identity that like people will latch onto, and then like they all meet together and then they reveal their identity slowly to each other. It they the thing that brings them together is no longer as important as the thing that separates them. So Gamergate just kind of was like Occupy Wall Street 2.0. It just happened to be in the gaming scene. And you've seen similar things happen in like Comicsgate and with the movie scenes. I mean, like what's been happening with the movie scenes right now, which is what I really paid attention to for the last few years. People are tired of like movies like Star Wars and um, Marvel movies of like pushing progressive feminist politics, and then also say at the same time being terribly written when it comes to plot and like how they'll emasculate fan favorite characters in order to like push an agenda when it comes to politics. Doctor Who, they just recently did that with Doctor Who with the David Tennant character. These type of things were what Gamergate was arguing about when it came to the gaming scene, but like at that time, gaming was still considered niche in the public, despite the fact that it was $1 billion industry that was making way more money than anybody else in the movie industry. And what you've seen with the culture war, it's just kind of progressed and progressed and progressed. Gamergate was really where it started because nobody was not caring about what they were doing it with the movies, and then some of these big players that you've seen, like the Quartering or Sargon, they've kind of like gone from the gaming scene into the movie scene. So it's like it's not real. It's almost like Gamergate has never really ended. It's just kind of changed into like what the culture war has become now. It's less about the gaming scene individually. It's more about just like in general, people wanting to force politics into the entertainment media, and people who are the regular common folk who buy the products being tired of having that progressive messages shoved down their throat all the time, and having their favorite proper or not properties favorite movies and games constantly just being destroyed or deconstructed. And did you saw the Star Wars movies like The Last Jedi, right?
Yeah, I was not a big fan.
Yeah, me neither. I fucking was ready to walk out of that movie several times, and the only reason I didn't is just because I was watching with my brother. Ryan Johnson, the guy who directed The Last Jedi, he's part of that same type of group that like Jim Sterling and Anita Sarkeesian would all be a part of. You know, he was about pushing political messages. That's why The Last Jedi, they had, you know, the cat or whatever her name was, the commander of the rebel army, who was a purple haired woman with like she wanted to emasculate the Poe character by telling him he needs to learn his place on the pecking order. Like all those type of scenes that were like that, those were pushed in there because the political agenda of the people behind the movie were wanting to shove a message rather than tell a good story. And it's been like that in a lot of these games as where people have been like tired of having stuff shoved down their throat. And Gamergate kind of never really ended. It just kind of merged into a different scene. And I have seen just different things happen over the years where instead of like talking about like gaming, now we're talking about or instead of talking about Zoe Quinn and what happened with her ex-boyfriend, now we're talking about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. It's almost the exact same thing that happened where like somebody was treating him, somebody was being like physically abusive, emotionally and mentally abusive to their spouse. In that case, Amber Heard was treating Johnny Depp like shit. And then when they got divorced or whatever, she dumped everything and made him out to be like this horrible person so he would get banned and stuff, similar to what Zoe Quinn was doing to her ex-boyfriend at the time. And then when he started holding on to his receipts to show how horrible a person she was, then people started rallying behind him. And so there's whole culture war centered around the Johnny Depp divorce. And I still have like a whole bunch of videos of that that my friends were sharing with me. You've seen with this culture war, it's the same type of battles happening. It's just happening in different mediums and different areas. You know, and people were seeing it happen in politics when Brett Kavanaugh was trying to become a Supreme Justice Court guy or whatever position he was going for, and a woman came out and she said, "Oh, he raped me like 30 years ago," but she had like really flimsy. Uh, um, Proof about that, and she relied on people's emotions rather than like actually having a cohesive story that would prove that he had done these things. All this stuff is all related. It's just taken large portion of time to realize how it's all related. And it's I don't know, it's just kind of like something that I've like observed for a while. And when I was paying attention to just Gamergate, I was not really caring about like the politics of everybody else. I was only caring about like what was happening in the gaming scene because I just thought that this was a problem that needed to be fixed. Let's stand up for the medium. After I kind of got disillusioned with how to handle Gamergate, everybody was with all the infighting that they were having. Just started focusing my attention on other things. But like I've noticed over the last decade how that's all been like very interchangeable and very related. because like it's this all part of this stupid culture war that just keeps going on and on. Sorry if I'm rambling a
No,
lot.
no. I like to give people a chance to express their views, and I do want to get into some of the more culture war stuff. And we do have some questions related to how the conversations about GamerGate are being mirrored, perhaps, in our
Hmm.
society at large. There's a question about that later on too. But first, I want to ask you, just so we can get our definitions down, can you define what GamerGate was?
Um. Hmm. I don't know. Gamergate was just basically a consumer revolt due to the culture war that was happening at the time. I guess that would be like like the most simplest version to define it by. Because what you had essentially was gaming people who were the consumers of the content. They were being shit on by their own audience, by not their own, excuse me. They were the audience that was being shit on by the people who were journalists and game developers who were part of that one side of the culture war, and the gaming scene were just like fed up with being treated badly, so they revolted en masse, and that's just kind of like how Gamergate was. It's no real different than how Comicsgate has had the consumers who buy comics get tired of seeing their favorite Marvel characters turned into whatever character that's like being really terrible, or the Last Jedi once again bringing that back up. You have Ryan Johnson intentionally making a movie that's going to piss off the fans, and so the fans are like, okay, well, why do I want to buy your guys' product if you're just going to make terrible movies that are intended to piss us off? It's just one consumer revolt after another. Gamergate was basically that. It was a consumer revolt that happened as a result of the culture war that was happening at the time.
So you think that okay? So the culture war aspect was really much more important to you than ethics in games journalism or other non-culture war aspects of the gaming industry that people
So
were wanting to
the part with
criticize?
the ethics in gaming, it wasn't that it's like less important or more important. It's more like that was like a battle that was happening in the culture war. Like it was the and it wasn't because of the culture war. It's just something that like happened um that let me rephrase it. When you had the people who were fucking over gamers as far as like taking their money and not doing bad products, you saw that all the time for a while, where you would have people who would buy a game and then the game turns out to be shit, or it has downloadable content that's not fully released, and then they'll you know just kind of use this as a way to like release bad products. You had a lot of that type of stuff happening, plus you had the journalists that were all in a clique together. That was the big ethics in gaming not tangent. Uh, that was a big factor when it came to people talking about the ethics in gaming. Is you had journalists that were all in cahoots with each other, who were using their privilege as a journalist to either shill for their friend's product or for a company while also screwing each other over. Do you remember? I don't remember exactly how it was, but do you remember the Dorito Gate where they like had like the guy Jeff Keighley, or not Jeff Keighley?
It was Keeley,
I
right?
can't remember.
It was Keeley,
Who
I
was
think.
it?
I think so. Let me double check, but I'll Google it now.
Uh, I think it was Jeff Keighley, but I could be
Yeah, Jeff
wrong. It's
Keeley,
been
it
so
was
long.
him.
Okay, yeah. Like that was not a culture war thing, right? That was an ethical issue in the gaming scene that people were getting kind of fed up about. But the culture war merged into that because the people who were being unethical, like Zoe Quinn and her friends that she would sleep with, that would give her public press, they happened to be feminists. If they had been conservatives, like conservative Christians, then it probably would not have been as much of an impact on the culture war side, and it would have been more of an ethical side. But because they were feminists, they used their feminist positions, excuse me, they used their positions to mix their political talking points about like you just hate women, you just hate girls being in the gaming scene. They pushed that as a way to deflect from the criticism of their unethical behavior. You know, like when Jack Thompson 20 years ago went against the gaming scene in the same way that Anita Sarkeesian did, he didn't have people in the game journalist side backing him up the way that you had Anita Sarkeesian having all her friends backing her up. You know, what's that guy from X Play or
Adam Sessler.
the Adam Sessler? Thank you. I remember Adam Sessler. He argued with Jack Thompson very passionately about what he was doing as far as using right-wing scare tactics to talk about how games are pushing or making children into mass shooters and stuff. And then a few years later, when him and Jim Sterling were on a stage, Adam Sessler was like, "Oh, you guys who are MRA, men's right activists or whatever in the gaming scene, you can go fuck yourselves." You know, he didn't say it like that, but I'm kind of paraphrasing what he
I mean,
said.
he said it pretty similar to that. I'm not sure which group in particular he was targeting, but he was
Yeah, he just
really
anybody
toxic.
who was like against Anita Sarkeesian, he was just like shitting on, basically. So he did a full 180, and that was because his politics was infused with the talking points of the ethics. So hopefully that kind of answered your question a little bit. You know, like how much of GamerGate was about ethics versus the culture war. It's like it was about both, but they were like bleeding into each other, so it was hard to kind of like say which part was all about one or the other.
You said Zoe Quinn befriending and sleeping around with
Like
people
Nathan
who could,
Grayson, I
yeah,
think
like
was one
Nathan
of them.
Grayson, people who could like promote her career and help her career. Do you think
Yeah. And
it's
also, people, whenever she decided to shit on the fine young capitalists, they would like hide what she was doing, and she would have all her followers go dox them and do other shit to them.
yeah, I've not researched the Finding Capital situation super close. Well, it looks like she did perhaps dox them. At first I thought that she only shared the docs or shared a link to the docs, but then Raymond, because that's what an article I was reading was saying, that someone had linked me. But then in the Airplay documentary part two, it looks like she may have actually shared some personal information about the Finding Capitalists. But it looks like it
Yeah.
was mostly like email addresses and stuff like that she was leaking out, not like a phone number, I don't think, but or address.
Yeah.
But still, like
Well,
you shouldn't be doing that
she was
if that's
part of the
private.
harassment campaign to derail them. I forget what extent. Somebody had a video up where she was like saying, "Oh, I only sent like 2 messages their way on Twitter," and then it showed like every message that she sent on Twitter, and it was like over like 30 of them, and it was all about like harassing them, saying that they should get destroyed and all this other shit. So I don't remember. I haven't seen that video in a long time. I could look for it, see if I can find it, but
Yeah, if you
like
could link it to me, that'd be great. But I do
I
know
doubt
that
it's still up anymore.
The Airplay documentary, part two of it, they do actually go through the doxing stuff a little bit. So the information does appear to be at least genuine. Um, but again, I haven't researched it myself, so I don't want to put claims in the book or in a stream that I
Yeah.
can't 100% verify.
I'm not seeing it on YouTube. The video I was looking for, so they probably took it down. But I'll say this when it comes to Zoe Quinn, she would talk about like harassment all the time that she was receiving. But the reason that she was receiving that is because she was part of like that group from somethingawful.com that would regularly harass and shit on people on the internet all the fucking time. She was part of that group. That's what a lot of the people that like, you know, when I did a GamerGate recap stream with QQ, like they was talking about this like group of like guys who were depressed, and so they like had a little server together where they talk about them being depressed and shit. And somebody played the game Depression Quest, and it was kind of bad. It wasn't really that good, and so she had all her followers go harass these guys and call them horrible shit all the time. Like she would use her following to do that, but then when the pushback came against her, she was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm such a victim. They hate me because I'm a woman." And then when like several years later, she used her power to push on that one guy, Alec Holloway, I think his name was. Let
Well,
me check.
her former roommate and possibly boyfriend. Looks like.
Yeah,
And
okay,
then
Alec Holloway.
she accused him. Well, he was saying
She,
stuff about her. Let's say like, hey, she's super manipulative. I don't trust her. Whatever, stuff like that. And then she accused him of being a sexual predator,
right, and he killed
or sexually
himself.
harassing her. And then he killed himself after the
Yeah,
allegations.
and if she's going to say that like people who are in GamerGate were like horrible harassing stuff, she led to this guy killing himself.
Well,
And
I don't. I mean, like,
anytime
I don't know. I mean, people kill themselves for a variety of reasons. But I gotta
she,
be completely fair
well,
for the
how's
fact.
this? Do you think he would have killed himself if she hadn't had done that?
I don't know this guy, dude. I don't. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I can share one of the articles that are on there. I mean, like I've
I've read
seen
Kathy
people,
Young talk about it in her article.
yeah, but like my point being is like if they're gonna hold people to a standard where it's like, oh, you're talking about Zoe Quinn, I mean, you're leading to her harassment, then she needs to be held accountable for that guy killing himself because it was her saying that he was like a sexual harasser and all this stuff. That the guy was like, my life is over, my career is over, so I might as well kill myself.
Did he actually
So
say that that's why he did it?
let me
Like a
double
note, a
check.
suicide note or anything?
I'm gonna look him up right now because there's like a few articles about it.
Yeah, I've read one or two of them, but I didn't. Well, I read like one, and I skimmed another one. But I'm not like super looked into it. Again, Sarge, actually, you might not agree with this approach, but in the beginning of this project, I deliberately kind of avoided doing a whole lot of research on the three specific people who have accused Gamergate of being a harassment campaign, because I didn't want there to be a perception that like, oh, this guy's only out there to to discredit these women's stories because he's a misogynist, Um, and I didn't want it to be like an oppositional work or be perceived as a pro Gamergate work. I wanted this to be viewed as completely neutral. But of course, um, as I've worked on the project more and done more research, it turns out that a lot of the anti-Gamergate people have a lot of
Hey, hold
skeletons in their
on.
closet.
You're breaking up. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I
I can
couldn't.
hear you. Yeah.
You're breaking up. I didn't hear any of that.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, all right, cool. You cut out right when you started saying, "Hey, you might disagree with this or something." Go ahead and say it again.
Um, Basically, just when I started the project, I was a lot more reticent and reluctant to do a whole lot of deep dive research into the three specific people who accused Gamergate of being a harassment campaign against them. Annie Sarkeesian, Zoe Quinn, Brianna Wu. And
Okay.
because I was like, well, I don't want people to think that that this is a biased work or that I'm just trying to write this whole book just to discredit these three specific people. And I didn't know how bad some of the receipts were on these people. Like I knew they were pretty bad, but I didn't know how bad. Um, so I kind of avoided that because I thought it would detract from the perceived quality or fairness rather, the neutrality of the
Okay.
work.
You're trying to
But
be more objective.
yeah, but then, as time goes on, I learn more and more about these specific people. And I think it is important that I actually cover the bad stuff that they did, even though like it's not specifically Gamergate related, quote unquote, that this guy killed himself, possibly
Yeah,
because of Zoe Quinn.
I
But it's like
you know,
it
I
speaks
found
to
a
her
couple.
character.
I was going to say I linked you one article. I was just looking up. I just sent to you as a DM. It doesn't really say whether or not it was her fault, but it kind of like talks a little bit about it. You can look up others, but when you're talking about like learning about the bad traits of people as you learn more about them, right?
Yes. I am to a degree. I wasn't really in the beginning. other than to verify specific claims. So, like if I'm interviewing somebody, like Scarlett, I interviewed Simone Tanzi, Scarlett IT. I'm not sure if you remember him from GamerGate. Uh, he he made a claim about Brianna Wu that she created a fake account basically and pretended to be pro Gamergate, and that's how she got involved with GG.
I remember Brianna Wu
But she,
making a fake account for Steam, and it was like using her account to harass herself.
well, so we can talk about that too. So she did actually make the fake Twitter account so that she can troll the Gamergate people by pretending to be one of them and say a lot of really stupid stuff that made Gamergate look bad for no reason apparently. Just I guess she claims that it was satire when she was revealed as having been the person behind this account. She's like, "Oh, it's just satire.
Yeah.
It's just satire."
And
But
I
I don't
found the
know what
Brianna
evidence.
Wu Kotaku in Action article that where she used her Steam account. I just sent it to you on
Oh,
DMs.
oh trust me, I know the receipts on this.
Okay, good.
She I've got the archives and stuff. It's been archived. She made the post allegedly harassing herself, or she says, "Is Brianna Wu a terrible person?" 8chan, well, is what is it? What is the exact quote? It's feminist gaming critic and game developer Brianna Wu a terrible. Hang on, let's just pull it up. Oh, I should have my receipts on this stuff more readily accessible, but
It's still a lot to go through. I mean, you're talking about thousands of different fucking things to talk about.
yeah. So yeah, basically, this was the first post on her forums, as far as anybody can tell, too. Now, she later tried to explain this particular post by saying that there were hundreds, quote unquote, hundreds of posts saying that her game sucks or that she sucks on the forums, and that the reason that she made this post was to guide all of that harassment, quote unquote, to one place. Now, I don't think people saying your game sucks is a form of harassment, or even that you suck is a form of harassment. I think that that's all within the realm of ideas and within the realm of discussion. But it doesn't appear that those hundreds of posts existed. Um, in fact, there doesn't appear to be a single archive or a single screenshot of a single one of these hundreds of posts that supposedly existed. Now, there were two people, I believe, in the forums who later on, not not before Brianna's post where she harassed herself allegedly, but after that post, there were two people who had said that some of the posts, some comments might have been deleted.
Mm,
But they don't say which comments, and they don't refer to, they don't provide evidence of like what comments got deleted. So is it
gotcha.
possible that maybe one or two posts were made that did criticize her, or did criticize her game? Which again, like that's completely within the realm of discussion. Um, it's possible that there were a couple, but there doesn't seem to be evidence that there was even one, except for these two comments that make vague references to some posts that got deleted.
Yeah,
So again, it doesn't appear that there were hundreds of posts. That does seem to be, at the very least, a great exaggeration, if not an outright fabrication.
right. So what would be your observation takeaway from that then? Like, because you were talking about like you were asking a question about I forgot what was you just had a question about people who might not be doing something. I don't know. Like what was your what was bring? I was trying to bring it back to the question that you were asking.
Oh, I was about to ask you about Zoe Quinn and her um, sleeping with other people or befriending other people and developing these networking ties with other people through a variety of different means to promote herself and to promote her game and to promote her ideology. Um, I I don't really like blame Zoe Quinn necessarily for like Nathan Grayson. Obvious, I think what Nathan Grayson did as the games journalist is like far worse. And like if she's a game developer who took advantage of a situation and realized, hey, look, I can get some extra, extra positive coverage by sleeping with Nathan Grayson or other people too, like her boss and others. Like I get
Allegedly, we don't
allegedly,
really know if she did.
yeah. Well, we know that they were in a relationship together.
Oh,
That's been
okay.
confirmed. But like if she saw personal gain from this, like the level of the types of ethics that I expect from a game developer are different from the types of ethics that I expect from a games journalist. Like
Yeah,
I
well,
wouldn't be
if
super.
you're trying to be a journalist, you're supposed to be more unbiased and objective, right?
Yes, yeah. Whereas her, she's making an artistic product, you could say, and trying to promote that artistic product. And like there are probably some ways that you can promote products that are like really unethical. And maybe like sleeping with a journalist who's covering your work is one of those ways, but it seems like that's mostly on the fault of the journalist.
Yeah,
And also, we don't like maybe they were like star-struck lovers or something. Like we don't know that specifically she slept with him
yeah.
or had a
We,
relationship with him because of promoting her game. We don't know specifically if that's the reason.
yeah. I don't. When it comes to who's supposed to be more objective, I definitely agree that it should be the journalist. And I don't know to what extent they were all doing something because all I have is basically the information that was pulled up from the internet aristocrat videos and the some of the links that were in like GamerGate um, subreddits and shit. I remember looking at receipts way back in the day, but that was like 8 years ago. So it's hard to remember, who did what because I haven't really focused on Gamergate in a long time, especially when it comes to these people. Um, but something that I was just thinking of when you brought up like whether or not these are legit when it comes to Brianna Wu, as far as her, like are these receipts valid? Are these things valid? I When I was in Gamergate for the few months that I was talking about it, I got kind of bored with trying to deal with all the infighting, and I started like playing pranks on people by trying to get them to do arguments where they are going to make themselves look like a fool, and I would just troll people that way, right? And one of the things that we did was with QQ, we uh, trolled him because he told us to. Me and my little group of friends, the Green Grapist guys, which is a whole different story in of itself. Um, he QQ had seen us troll somebody else, and so he was like, "Oh, I want to see you guys troll me. Do it the best that you can." And so what we did is we took a recorded interview with him that he knew we were recording with him. He just didn't know that we were going to use it. We doctored it up to make it seem like he was part of a secret cabal that was out to destroy Gamergate, and then we released it onto like 8chan or whatever, and it said, "What is the truth about QQ?" and all this other stuff. So we're doing that to fuck with him and fuck with the people that are constantly looking for like a scoop about something. Like, oh, he's actually working against us. We were doing that to fuck with people, and then we revealed what we did when we did a stream with him. It was pretty funny. And he got a little bit flustered and he was like, "Oh, I hate you guys so much." But the reason I bring that up is you can have people who generate fake information in order to push a narrative on anything. So you have to be careful with that. Brianna Wu, whether or not the receipts are valid, it sounded like you had like some receipts on Zoe Quinn that were valid, or Nathan Grayson. It can be very easy for someone to manipulate information. So if you're trying to be objective, you have to always keep that in mind that somebody could be using fake information to form an argument or lead a narrative in a certain direction.
Yeah, and
You
there
know, I,
actually, well, I try to be very very careful. Actually, there might be a way. I'm not super familiar with Steam moderation on the Steam forum moderation, though I'm technically a moderator of the GamerGate Steam group. Um, it might be possible for Brianna Wu to prove her story if she's the moderator of the forum. Oh, but this was the
mm,
Greenlight forums, though. I'm not sure the Greenlight forums specifically exist, so it might just be lost to time.
gotcha.
Yeah, it might be because I'm looking through now to see just quickly. You can see reported posts, but I don't know if you can see removed posts.
Yeah.
So I don't know if she'd
Um,
even be able to pull it up. But
Yeah, and also like remember how I was telling you about the harassment that Zoe Quinn did to like the fine young capitalists and like the people in that forum that were depressed and stuff.
The Wizard Chan
Like
people, yeah.
Wizard Chan, that's what it was. Yeah. Unless you have the receipts, we don't know to what extent that was, the happening. It's only about like what people were able to capture at the time.
Yeah, and I know the Wizard Chan story. The Wizard Chan people claim basically that they were falsely accused of harassing her, and her story at the time was that they were a harassment mob to destroy her life. Uh, sort of the same thing she said about GamerGate, actually, though this was way before GamerGate.
That's what led into Gamergate was because those guys were like talking about it on like 8chan and other play or
Well,
4chan or whatever.
8chan existed, but it wasn't really
Yeah,
a
it
hub
was
of GamerGate
4chan. I think they
discussion,
were just talking like
right?
4chan and similar forums. But like, I remember Internet Aristocrat, he brought that up in his video, his first video of Zoe Quinn. So that was like a talking point that was already existing before Gamergate really started. Because, like Gamergate really started when Internet Aristocrat made those videos and then Adam Baldwin watched it and coined the Gamergate. You know, so like all the stuff that like he talked about that Zoe Quinn was doing to have her followers harass people and then, or claim that they were harassing her, that was all stuff that was happening months before the actual event happened.
Yeah, and I just again, I've got a lot of information about Brianna Wu. I don't have as much information about Zoe Quinn. I've not. I could bolster my archive list and get some really interesting stuff. So please, if anyone has any information about the Zoe Quinn stuff regarding Wizard Chan, regarding Fine Young Capitalists, um, regarding anything like that, the Alex Holoka situation, showing that she's innocent or showing that maybe she's not, definitely send me that information. I'd be very interested in seeing it. I've not done a deep dive into that specific area yet, though it is part of the conversation, and maybe I should.
Yeah.
All right, so Lieutenant Sarge, do you consider yourself a gamer, and what does that mean to you?
I mean, sure. Gaming again, all being a gamer means is you just love video games or love playing games. I like playing games when I'm done working or doing whatever, as a ways to kind of play with friends and shit. Like it's just a fun little hobby. It's not like it's kind of like I'm an atheist or agnostic. It doesn't mean that like that's the only thing I am. It's just like that's just like an identity that is described to me, right? I am also um, a someone who likes books and movies. They don't really. One thing I remember hearing as a criticism about people who use gamer as a tag is that they don't really have the same thing for movies and books as far as like having a label. But gamers was a label that was kind of describing people who play video games in a negative way, and they took that the gaming scene and they adopted it as a label in the same way that people of minority backgrounds will sometimes take a word describing them and they adopt it as a label because it's like now a badge of endearment. Gaming was just like it was a label, was a scene for people who were often ostracized and were considered losers or wouldn't grow up. And then when you found out that the majority of people were gamers, they kind of like used it as a word to celebrate the hobby that they were now a part of. I
Is
don't
the
know if that
term
answers your question.
is the term gamer gendered for you?
No. I mean, you can say gamer girl if you want to, but I feel like that's like people adding an additional part to the label. If you just call yourself a gamer, you can just be like, I'm a gamer, whether you're a girl or a guy.
On August 28th, 2014, 10 competing publications all published articles on the same day. These 10 articles were followed by 9 additional articles on other mostly gaming sites over the next several days, which some saw as calling for an end to the gamer identity. What did you think of these articles?
So that's where like I was really getting passionate about Gamergate because I saw that happening and I heard them talking about it and I saw like the extra credits guys who I had been very uh who I had held up as a very in an idealistic way. They were going on the side of like removing gamers as an identity. Um, like I feel that the guys who were trying to just destroy gaming identity, they were the pretentious douchebags that wanted to elevate the gaming scene into this high art form, which you could do without tearing apart the culture, but they or the subculture of gaming, but they didn't want to be seen as part of that. Like, who was that one girl that wrote the "Gamers Are Dead" article? Um,
Oh, there were a bunch, but you mean
there
probably
there's
probably
a
there's two
specific one.
common ones. There's Leia Alexander,
That's who it
who
is.
was
That's what I'm thinking of.
extremely hostile in her did it in the way she went about it.
Yeah,
Um,
she was somebody who was not only a narcissist who hated the gaming scene, but she also was part of a group that wanted to alienate themselves while keeping the credit that comes with creating games, if that makes sense. Like it's kind of like somebody who's like, I'm going to make a movie, but it's not going to be a movie. It's a film or something like that. You know what I mean? I'm not just going to write a book. It's whatever, a journal or it's a manuscript or something like that. You know, it's I run into these pretentious types of people all the time. They want to see themselves as different than the more common layman of a particular group, and that's what they were trying to do with the whole "Gamers Are Dead" articles. They were trying to use the genre itself while also talking about how they're better than said genre and that they were like they were all part of their own little in group that were in their own little echo chamber that talked about like games that were artistic in vision rather than like made to be fun. You know, these are the type of guys that would push games um like, you know, instead of trying to push Call of Duty where everybody would make fun of Call of Duty as like a game that's like mindless action and fun, or like games like Halo. You know, I had a lot of former friends that were of that type of people where they're like, "Oh, I don't like games like Call of Duty. That's for like brain dead people." And then they would turn around and say, "Oh, this game is artistic." I'm trying to remember some of the games.
oh, you cut out, sir. Can you hear me? Sarge, are you there? Uh-oh. Yeah, okay, you're back now. I'm sorry. You cut out slightly.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
I think I pushed the mute button on my microphone. Sorry, I don't know how much of that you got, but I was saying that you had people. There was that game that came out where you just walk around a house grabbing notes,
Oh, going
and I was
home?
like, "Gone Home." Thank you. I was trying to think of that one. Like you would have people who would say like push that as being like this like, oh, you really have to try this game out, it's so great, so atmospheric, and he's just like a walking simulator that tells you about a girl who turns out to be a lesbian. That's all it was. And it's like, look, I'm not saying that all games have to be Call of Duty or Halo, but if you're just going to make a walking simulator, like don't really want to play that, and I especially don't want to play if it's about a teenage lesbian girl. If there's one fucking genre I don't give a fuck about, it's about like teenage girls trying to find their identity. I would much rather play a game that is like dealing with like political stuff in a way where they talk about like the complex political concepts of war, like how Metal Gear Solid does. It's not to say I won't play a game that has a gay character. I just if that's the only thing that you're focusing on, I just don't give a shit about it.
Yeah, it's interesting too because I discussed this last night with the Pinko, or was it 2 days ago? It was 2 days ago with the Pinko merchant. He's a he's not an anti-GamerGate guy really because he didn't really he didn't participate in any of the discussions regarding GamerGate back then. But he's someone who is looking back at GamerGate years later as someone who wasn't involved in it at all, and he doesn't like it, and he's got like some far left views, but like He's like I don't know whatever. I don't dislike the guy or anything on a personal level. I just disagree with him on a lot of stuff regarding this specific topic. Um, I interviewed him because he made a video about GamerGate criticizing it. He made this video like literally a few months ago, um, trying to link GamerGate with like the far right and stuff like that. I could link you the video if you want to watch it
Yeah,
sometime.
you
But
know,
it
that's
basically
not
he
like
was
a.
saying, hang on,
Okay.
yeah, he was saying that that GamerGate was basically opposed to games like this being made, or that like that there was a backlash um, against games like this being made. And what I told him was essentially a lot of what you just said. Like, if you want to make games like that, you can, but it's not going to appeal to me. I think it's going to be kind of stupid, and that's fine. Like, people are entitled to their opinion. The gaming industry is huge, and all different types of games can be made, and not every type of game is going to appeal to every type of audience. And you're going to have
Yeah,
people who like the Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball, and you're going to have people who like the Call of Duty. You're going to have people who like Metal Gear Solid. You're going to have people who like weird stuff like Gone Home or Sunset or whatever.
yeah. When it comes to stuff, the people saying like, they want a game that like appeals to them, where it's like it's an artistic, progressive message. It reminds me of the episode that South Park just released, where they have Cartman as Kathleen Kennedy, and he's saying, "Put a chick in it, make her gay and lame." You know, it's like with the recent movies that have been coming out, they've like constantly been pushing that onto films with that are done by Disney, especially. And there's a channel, very popular YouTuber called Moon, who does really good analysis about how that's hurting Disney's bottom line. And I think what people, like this guy that you're talking about, might not fully understand is that while it could be true that like Gamergate had alt right people in it, even though it had other people who weren't alt right, like myself, um, it it was when it comes to the games like Gone Home that like people were kind of protesting about, they're like not protesting it that it's just about a gay character. They're protesting it because it's about doing nothing but reading the diaries of a gay character, and then you might as well just make that into a fucking book rather than walking around a house. It's like these are games that are not really games. And if people will say like, "Oh, well, you just hate women and female characters." I really love the game Alien Isolation. The main character in Alien Isolation is a woman. She's Ripley's daughter from the movie Aliens, and the whole game is very similar in a POV to Gone Home. You don't get a whole lot of guns. You get like one pistol and one shotgun and a flamethrower, and you have to rely on keeping yourself hidden from the alien creature that's stomping around looking for stuff. Not all games have to be Call of Duty, but like if you're just going to make a walking simulator and then you're going to have everybody praise it as like the greatest thing ever simply because it agrees with your politics, people are going to push back on that. It would be the same as if they had a walking simulator that was telling you about how great Donald Trump is and why you should join the military if you want to be a good Christian right wing dude. In fact, I know that they would be angry about that, the guys on the anti-Gamergate side, because people who like extra credits were criticizing games for putting politics that were right wing into them. Like the Call of Duty Juarez, where they like criticized that one for being right wing because it like dealt with like killing gang members and stuff. And people would criticize GTA 5 or GTA 4 for similar types of stuff. So what they're really saying is they want to push their stuff and have that be the focus. They're not really giving a shit about like the artistic merit of a product. They just use the argument of an artistic merit as like a means of defense and deflection. And I
So
don't know
when you say
this
people,
anti-Gamergate guy that you're talking about. I'm sure he's got a lot of valid opinions. I've seen a lot of YouTubers like Destiny and Vosh and Hassan Piker. They go in and they'll push their fucking politics about something, and then like anything that they don't like, they'll call it like far right or
well, no,
whatever.
Destiny, I think actually does like a really fair job and is
I do
realistically
too. I do
honest. Yeah.
too. I've watched a lot of Destiny's podcasts over the last year, and he's been far better about being neutral and really trying to be as objective as possible in his arguments. But for guys like Vosh and Hassan Piker, they are not like that.
No, they're not at all. Dude, Hassan talks about GamerGate like every day, dude. I swear to God. No, if you, I don't know. I've only seen like a handful of his things. He's really bad. Like he's extremely dishonest, it seems.
There was a
But
wonderful video
he
done
keeps
by Willie
talking about
Mack
it.
Show. Willie Mack Show did a wonderful video about
Oh
Hassan
my God.
Piker.
Yeah, and how he keeps getting like everything factually wrong and never owns up to any of it and blames everybody else. Dude.
Yeah, and then Destiny did a video about Hassan Piker arguing with Willie Mack on his show, and I was watching that, and I was like, "This is just fucking great." Like, I was like, "This is I'm gonna listen to this whole thing while I eat my breakfast. This is just priceless." So, no, the only thing I don't like about Destiny is like his views on relationships, like him being a cuck and having an open relationship. I think it's kind of like perverse and weird, but it doesn't seem to be working out for him based on everything that's been coming out the
Well, yeah,
last couple of days.
the drama that's blown up and like everybody's focused on. Yeah.
But when it comes to him arguing, like he's very, very sharp and he's very good at deconstructing arguments. He's been going back and forth on the Israel Gaza situation, and I've been really listening to him make good arguments that makes me reevaluate my own previous positions. He's done very well on that, so I give credit where credit's due, or I try to, anyways. I like Destiny. I don't love him, and I think he sometimes is wrong on stuff. Like if you go listen to when Mr. Medicare and Destiny were debating, that's like the first time I've ever seen Destiny lose in a debate.
Yeah, though that was also like 8 years ago. He was
That's very
much more.
true.
He was like super. He was a lot more in like the woke camp, like 8 years
Yes.
ago, and he's moved away from that since.
Yeah, he got famous because he argued with JonTron, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then that like boosted his career.
Well,
and
he was a
Medicare kind of
professional StarCraft player prior to that, so he was like already kind of famous prior to the JonTron thing. But
yeah, okay, that makes sense. My knowledge on the Destiny lore is very limited. I basically just watch him to see what he's talking about in each different video, and because I know that he'll argue against both sides, but it does seem like he kind of evolved over the years, and I think he's kind of more of a centrist at this point, if anything.
yeah, I've not streamed with him yet, though. Like I'm in touch actually with I've not interacted with him directly. Well, a couple times I guess, but I'm in touch with actually his producer for his show, and they're gonna have me on soon-ish probably. They've talked about it, and really great guy, Ken Moore. Super friendly guy. I've talked with him a few times. He's the producer for one of Destiny's shows, Kick or Keep. So
Well, if you decide to do an debate with Destiny about Gamergate, make sure you have all your receipts ready.
yeah, well, I don't even think he would debate me on it because I don't think he's like even really like that anti Gamergate. He's only brought it up like I've only seen him talk. I've seen like probably thousands of hours of his shit, for better or worse. But he's only brought it up like once or twice, and he didn't even say anything like super negative about it. He just referred to it like as like a conflict, but he didn't like take sides when how he talked about it.
It's probably because it was just like something he like barely paid attention to, and like he knows like the maybe the big arguments, and then he just doesn't really, he's more focused on like regular politics than like culture war stuff when it comes to like games and movies.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry to get a sidetracked.
That's us talking about Destiny for a few minutes.
Yeah. Well, hey, I wish him the best with everything going on. Him and Melina both. I don't have any beef with either of them, and I'm happy to work with them both in the future. So.
I don't hate him at all. I think he's actually a very good debater. I just like think his views on relationships is backfiring in his face. And for a guy who's as intelligent as him, he should probably reflect on that a little bit.
Yeah, dude, I don't know if we want to get into like his relationship stuff. Like it's
we don't need to.
Yeah.
That's what I was just kind of saying that.
Yeah.
Like
No, it's not just you. Like I don't. It's probably fine to talk about because everyone on the internet is like everybody.
Well,
like,
he was very open about it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. He was very open about it. He talked about it himself a lot, and when you're very open about your relationship, it kind of opens the door to discussion about it.
Yeah. No, for sure, for sure. Anyway, why do you
We were
think
talking about GamerGate.
yeah, the gamers are dead articles? Why do you think they wrote these articles? The Games Press did.
Well, there's a few reasons why they could have done it, and I'm just postulating because I wasn't in their head, and it's been about 8 years since talking about it. But you did have one group of people that were all friends of each other, right? And so, just like how you remember how I was bringing up Ryan Johnson in The Last Jedi. I'll use him as an example to talk about the Gamers Are Dead article. Ryan Johnson had a video where he said, "I wanted to make a movie that would divide the fans, and if I can divide the fans and make 50% hate it and 50% like it, then I feel like I've done a good job." That mentality was shared by a lot of like game developers and game journalists at the time, where like they really did not like their own fans, or the people, not their own fans, but fans in general. They like hate the common person, and so they want to distance themselves by acting like they're better than everybody else. That is one version. The other version, one or at least one other version that I would kind of see it as is they were all part of like a little clique that was getting kind of called out for their bad behavior. So they were trying to do like a damage control thing by saying, "Well, fuck these guys. We don't need them anyways." And then if you listen to like guys like QQ, there was a culture push to like introduce more progressive politics into the crowd, and so they were using tactics that were used by kind of Marxist communists in order to divide the gaming scene, so that way they could like introduce their own politics into the gaming scene.
When you
I
say
I think that's what QQ had said. It's been like again like 8 years since I remember him talking about it.
he wanted me to say hi to you too, by the way. He said hi, say hi to LT Lieutenant Sarge for me.
Well, cool. I love QQ. I'll say hi to him back.
Yeah.
If QQ, if you're listening to this, I still consider you my little blue furry friend.
I interviewed him like 2 days ago, 3 days ago.
I did see that pop up. I didn't watch it yet. I'll probably watch it today or tomorrow. I was looking at some of your interviews and I was wanting to listen to them ahead of time, but I just was so focused on school that I didn't get around to doing it.
Oh yeah, no, that's totally fine, man. I don't expect people to like watch all my shit. I completely understand. People have lives.
Yeah. By the way, I do have those streams. They're just unlisted right now, but I have them on my YouTube. If you ever want to listen to the streams where me and QQ were going over stuff regarding the GamerGate scene, not the troll stream, which is also very fun, but like the actual streams where we were like kind of going into detail about things that he had done research on. That's kind of what I was talking about when I said that they were using talking points to distance, or not talking points, political tactics to distance the game developers and game journalists from the gaming scene. QQ had been able to go into far better detail than I can, and he might remember what it was that I was talking about. But also, if you ever want to listen to QQ do a karaoke with me, I still have that stream too, and it was funny as fuck.
Oh, dude, you got it. Just yeah, if you don't mind, it doesn't have to be anytime soon. I'm not like in a super rush because I probably won't watch them for quite a while, if
It,
ever.
we,
But I
we
want to
did
save historical evidence. I want to save as much history as I can. Well, not as much history that I think is interesting. So I'm less interested in like the karaoke thing, dude. I gotta see it. Okay, I probably will watch. Okay,
I was
I'll
gonna
be
say
honest with you.
it was a Christmas event. We did, yeah, Gamergate goes caroling, and we just did like for like 3 hours. Everybody was like singing songs. So I convinced QQ to sing. I think I can't remember which song we did, but I think it was "Let It Go" from Frozen.
Oh my God, dude! Have you seen the GamerGate sing song? This probably was
No,
not QQ as the singer, but it shows Elsa from Frozen, um, and she's got like press on her dress, like it says like PRESS. Like I said, she's a journalist, and she's like a games journalist who's singing about how the gamers are all evil. It's great, dude. Oh my god, I gotta link you this. But dude, I gotta see the karaoke thing. And if you have anything that's like a research stream, like if there's a
Yes,
stream
I'm actually
of you guys going through
I'm
research and
looking
stuff,
up
I'll.
some of the former research streams that we did right now, and I will um, link you those as well as some of the other debates um, that we did. Because me and QQ, we did what was a GamerGate annual recap, and all that was just going through all the stuff that led up to GamerGate. I'll put it in your public research file. How about that?
Wait, thank you. Yeah, and I'll try and. Well, wait, they're unlisted videos though. Other people can see that.
That's fine. This I just unlisted it so that way people who are watching my gaming videos, if they don't want to be like have to scroll through GamerGate shit, so it's fine if people watch them. I don't care.
So you mentioned earlier people protesting Gone Home. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I know we're going back a little bit, but I do want to ask, and I feel it's important that I ask. What do you mean by protesting it?
Protesting Gone Home.
I think you used the word protesting specifically. I don't know if that you intended to use it, but
Oh, I probably was just using the word. Um, yeah, people. There were people that did not like Gone Home. I remember that because that was like there was like videos people mocking it and everything. See if I can find one of those videos.
oh, I believe there probably were videos of people mocking it. I don't doubt that at all. I view that as being within the realm of ideas, though, of
Yeah,
like people
that,
being allowed to
yeah.
criticize whatever the fuck they want. I don't care if people mock Gone Home, mock Dead or Alive, mock whatever. Um, I just wanted to like you don't mean that people think that like they shouldn't be allowed to make games like this or they should be kicked off the
Oh
Steam store,
no, you
right?
can make it.
Or
Go
right?
for it if you want to. If you want to make Gone Home as I was looking at just a Gone Home speed run, and it's like less than a minute. Um, if you want to make games like Gone Home, or there was other games that came out, like there was one that was very similar to Gone Home, where you are walking around like a house on like a cave or a house near like a coastal cliffside.
Oh, the What Remains of Edith Finch.
Yeah, that's the one. Okay. Like you can make those games and then like I'm not really interested in them, but if you want to make those games and you like that's your thing, that's your niche, then go for it. I just if but the realm, like you're saying, it's in the realm of ideas. If you're going to make those games, you also have to be willing to be criticized. I mean, we criticized the fuck out of the Call of Duty scene for being a very repetitive. Like the Call of Duty games are basically like the national foot or the FIFA and football games that get released every year. They're fucking basically the same thing over and over and over again, especially with Call of Duty first person shooters that focus on multiplayer and they don't really do anything new other than like add a couple changes here and there and they release the same fucking game. That's something that's worthy of criticism, right?
Yeah,
In the
absolutely.
same way that those are worthy of criticism, Gone Home is worthy of criticism for being a boring fucking walking simulator.
Yeah, I never played Gone Home. Never had any interest in it. I did actually play the other one you mentioned though. What Remains of Edith Finch. It was free on the Games Pass, and one of my friends said to check it out.
Yeah.
It's. Have you played it?
No, I've seen it. I was looking to see if there was going to be like an Alien Isolation type of thing where it had jump scares and stuff that might be interesting, or like Outlast, because Outlast is a game where you can't really do anything other than walk around with like a video camera, and yet that game's really scary because of the way that they set it up, right?
Yeah, I've
So
not played Outlast either, dude. I actually I might play it pretty soon because one of my friends has been talking about playing it with me, like coming over and doing a game night. But
that would
the
be cool.
when I played What Remains of Edith Finch, like it's not like it's a very different thing. It's like not really a game, I guess you could say. Like there's no win conditions, there's no losing conditions,
What is it
but
called?
it
Edith?
is an interesting story that is being followed. That I find that to be interesting. But there is this whole new genre of thing that is like being created, and it's like it doesn't quite meet most of the technical definitions of a game, but it's not really a movie either. And
Do
like,
you
what
know?
do we
Do you
think about
one
these
of the
things?
reasons I think that is happening where they make games like that is because a long time ago, back when he was alive, Roger Ebert, you know who he is, right?
Yes, the film critic.
Yeah, he had said that games can never be art because they have to have a win condition and other shit like that. So I think that there's been a large push by like indie developers to create games that don't have the common mechanics that make up a game, so that way they can focus on being an art rather than like an actual game.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe. How? What do we call these new things? Are we fine with just calling them games though? Because
you
like
can
I
just
think that
call
they're
them.
good.
You can just call them games. I mean, like, there's no reason that you have to like. We don't need to like come up with like new definitions every time somebody tries to come up with something original. It can still be. Like a student art film is still considered a movie, right?
Oh yeah.
So that doesn't mean that like it just because you make an art film that's only 15 minutes and it doesn't have a lot of anything in there other than like seeing whatever is on the camera. That can be completely different than Michael Bay's Transformers, which is nothing but like hot girls, hot cars, and robots punching each other. They're still movies. It's just that people want to classify them differently because they don't like to be associated with something that they view negatively.
If the games press tried to reform or even just ignored the, am I reading through the right question list? What the fuck? I think I'm through the on the neutral list. Hang on.
I found the Roger Ebert, by the way, the article. He said video games can never be art. That
Yeah,
came
but
out.
Roger Ebert's an idiot, bro. Or at least in this particular area.
Yeah, and like if you read the article, you'll see that he brings up examples that other people were trying to push, as far as like what kind of games there are, and there was a couple of them that he did, like Flower. Flower is a game that like where you were just like a rose petal that floats on the wind. He brought up Braid as another example, and I disagree with him philosophically. I mean, granted he's dead, so there's no point in arguing with him anymore. But I disagree with this notion. I thought Metal Gear Solid, especially 1 and 2, are very artistic and could be a form of art. I mean, like Metal Gear Solid 2 is all about deconstructing games as an action franchise and making you question whether or not you, the player, are just being manipulated the same way the game character is. Like that's what movies do when they do art films all the fucking time.
Yeah.
So like I don't see why you have to like have a game that's boring as fuck in order to push a message. You can just make an entertaining game and have an interesting message on it on top of it.
Yeah, I said I shouldn't have said he was stupid, but I've seen his arguments here a little bit. I really, for the same reasons you've outlined, a lot of games do have these extraordinarily complex themes to them. Uh, and also, like, just because there's an interactive element, like a gameplay element to it, that doesn't mean that they can't be art.
Yeah.
It's a
I,
very weird definition.
Yeah, no, but I think that his argument is where you have because he was very respected in the films industry, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of these game developers probably took studies and stuff, and so respected him as as an artist, and they wanted to impress him by saying, "Look, our game isn't Mario. Our game is this. It's about a flower that floats in the wind, so you can see all the colors of the nature." It's like I think that they were, you had like on some level people like Roger Ebert were influencing the game indie developing scene to try and push games into a high art. And so like the idea that games that like Gone Home or whatever that they would focus more on that type of stuff about like the themes and like whatever narrative that they're wanting to tell in the story. That would become the focus rather than like the mechanics of it because they were trying to rely less on the mechanics and more of like how the mechanics can tell a story.
Yeah, and one thing I think that actually can make games interesting, and it would be interesting if Ebert were still alive. We can ask him about it now because he might have changed his view on this. He might have, because it's such like the game as games have gotten more advanced and people have done more and more things with them. The gameplay mechanics themselves, I think, can increase and add to the artistic experience. Like I was playing Ace Combat 5 the other day. I just beat it, first time ever, um, and it really is interesting how they weave the gameplay so tightly in with the story, with the cutscenes, with the dialogue from the characters. It's the gameplay itself is an artistic element in addition
Yeah.
to just being a gameplay element. And it's interesting how the gameplay itself can make a game more of an artistic experience, I think.
Yeah, I also just linked another article where Roger Ebert did kind of backtrack a little bit on what he said. It's called "Okay, Kids, You Can Play on My Lawn," and one of the games he lists in that article that is similar to the one you were just describing is Shadows of the Colossus. You ever played that game?
I've played for 5 minutes. I just got it like 3 months ago. I got it for PS2 and I want to play it, but dude, it's a daunting endeavor.
It is, but I'll tell you this, man. That game is like when people talk about games being art, I really do think that is one of the best examples because even though it has video game mechanics, like you have to climb the monsters and stab them with a sword, um, it's a lot of the game elements are really dialed down so that you can be immersed in the world and with the character. And it's one of those things where like they really knew how to like without being too pretentious, they could like make you immersed in this world in sort of like a film style. And the only thing that really shows up as a video game mechanic is like your health bar, which only shows up when you're taking damage, and then like your stamina grip gauge, which shows up whenever you're climbing on stuff.
Yeah, dude,
The rest
I need to play that 1,000% because everyone says it's the most amazing game of all time. They're like, "Oh my god, have you not played Shadow of the Colossus?"
well, I don't want to hype it up and then you get disappointed. I will say though, if you don't get it spoiled and you play to the end, it's got a really cool ending. As what I will say. It reminds me of like Greek tragedies. Of like, I was doing a Greek mythology class this last semester, and Shadows of the Colossus reminds me of that, where you have a lot of these guys like Hercules and Odysseus. They would like have to deal with like all these like trials and endeavors in order to get back home and stuff. Shadows of the Colossus is the story is very much in that type of vein.
Well, you've talked about how GamerGate for you, the culture war and the ethics portion of it are drastically interlinked with one another. Um, so I think it'll be interesting to get your feedback on what you think of what would have happened if instead of writing the Gamers Are Dead articles and instead of trying to ignore the people raising ethical concerns, the games journalists instead just said, "Hey, look, we made some mistakes here. Here are the steps we're going to take to do better in the future, and we're sorry." What do you think
Well,
would have happened?
there's two things to focus on. That one thing is that when it comes to like the toxic gaming scene that they were kind of criticizing, even though they were painting everybody in the gaming scene with a broad brush when it comes to that. But you have like people who are, I'm going to use the word toxic just because that's the colloquial term, that they were kind of addressing during Gamergate. You do have people who are like that. Like if you ever play a Call of Duty game or Halo or Counter Strike on a server, a public server, you have people dropping the N word and calling each other faggot and all that other type of shit all the fucking time. And so you do have people that are kind of like these like nasty individuals that like I play with friends all the time on like multiplayer games, and as soon as they start to lose a fighting match, like they get really fucking heated, and so you do have those elements of the gaming scene that are worth criticizing. I feel like if they wanted to criticize that, and they wanted to criticize the Gamergate side without distancing themselves from their core audience, what they could have done is said, okay, look, here are what we see as the problem, but like in order for like us all to get along, here's like we should navigate these like differences. But I think it would have been really tough because in their eyes, everybody that was pro Gamergate was part of the like I want to see Zoe Quinn get killed kind of, or not killed, but fuck her, I want to harass her. Fuck Anita Sarkeesian, I want to harass her. They were having people that were like that all the fucking time. So it would be very difficult for them to do a nuanced approach um, from their point of view, at least. My way of doing it was I would have been like, okay, let's just do this like as a documentary style thing, kind of like what you're doing right now. Um, and we're going to bring in all the people that have all these viewpoints. David Packman back when he did the GamerGate videos, he was actually doing a similar approach to what I'm talking about. He brought on guys like Milo Yiannopoulos, Brianna Wu, Arthur Chu, um, but like it's a tough question because you're dealing with the toxicity of the internet, which gaming was very heavy in the internet at that time. A lot of these guys, they were in their early to mid 20s, and they still had not like fully or emotionally developed, but they were very intelligent and they were very focused on like the things that they were passionate about. The gaming scene had massive issues with people doing or game developers would use loot boxes and shit like that to fucking steal more money from the gaming scene. So people were very angry about how they were being used and manipulated all the time. So you if you were going to try and fix this approach, you would need to do something where you're very even-handed. And I don't know that that's something you could successfully do because a lot of people didn't want to be even-handed. They wanted to win. They wanted to win the argument. The feminists wanted to win and say that everybody who was against them was just a misogynist. The gamers wanted to win and say that everybody who was against them was a corrupt piece of shit. So, if you want to say, how would you solve the Gamergate scene? Man, I'd be like saying, how do you solve the political divide in America right now where Republicans and Democrats are constantly killing each other?
What do
I
you?
don't, not to sound too pessimistic and nihilist. It's just saying, like, there was a lot of factors that would have to be addressed, and I don't think I really have an answer for how would be the best way to go about it, other than trying to be as neutral, even-handed as possible.
And like you mentioned David Packman. I feel like he did a pretty good job actually.
I really that was what made me start watching him because I'd seen him when I was in the military do political talk podcasts. I used to be a very big Young Turks fan back in the day in like 2012, 2013 when I that was when I was going through my liberal progressive phase, and I remember watching David Packman a few times. But when he did the Gamergate videos, I really enjoyed how he was like trying to like be like a true journalist, get to the bottom of the truth and let people say what they have to say, and then ask questions that were, pointed questions about like, whether or not their arguments were valid. Like he did a very good job. He granted later on he did like a interview with like somebody else, and it started to show that he was coming against the GamerGate side. But and I know he ultimately said that he was not on their side, but I still think that he did a good job, regardless of whether or not his personal politics and how he felt were different than mine.
Yeah, I know. I know I think I assume I know the interview you're talking about, where he interviewed a very specific person who caused a lot of controversy. Because it seemed like maybe well, because one, like people didn't know who this person was, and two, like it seemed like they had some views that were pretty far
Yeah.
outside the
Yeah.
mainstream. But in and like I gave David Packman shit for that interview. A bunch of other people criticized him too. But like I've interviewed people who are super controversial as well. And
Hmm.
you know what? I understand David Packman going into this and being like, look, I should find one guy who like actually does meet the stereotype of like what the media claims the gamergaters are. Right, and he found one person like that and interviewed him. I've interviewed Pterodax. As a journalist, isn't I understand why he would want to include that perspective, even though it got him a lot of flack.
Yeah. I think one of the first ones I saw him start to really kind of be critical was when he interviewed Sargon. Because like Sargon, I forget if he did one or two videos interviews with Sargon, but he criticized Sargon because Sargon was said he was making clickbait titles, and we were talking about Destiny earlier. When David Packman and Destiny were having a political argument about 7, 8 months ago, he re-brought up that same video with Sargon, where Sargon was criticizing for clickbait titles, and they got into a pedantic argument about the nuance of what is a clickbait title and what is not.
Yeah, I remember this controversy at the time. I think I did actually think that he was using clickbait a little bit, but I also didn't think it was like that big of a deal as long as he didn't misrepresent the facts in the actual
Yeah.
video.
Well, then and
But
then you have to ask yourself about the ethics of using clickbait. Like, is it a bad thing? Is it inherently wrong? When should you use it? When should you not? Does a title have to be just like as blatant as possible? But like people who are like work for like the New York Times or BuzzFeed, they would use clickbait articles, and then like the article was filled with like nonsense, and so it would like anger people. So I think that's what people were getting kind of fed up with clickbait.
yeah, and there are a lot of genuine criticisms to be had of it. I think it is a major issue, and it seems to be harming our society too because it makes people angry because
Yeah.
it misleads them too. Assuming well, it can mislead them. Clickbait and lying are like not quite the same thing. Because you can have clickbait, but like just present things in a way that's super negative, but not necessarily lying. Which I think is what Pac-Man was doing, right? He was presenting things like he wasn't like deliberately lying in his titles, in his thumbnails, but like he would purposely make them in a way like a lot, not just him particularly. I'm not like trying to single out David Pac-Man, but like content creators and like fucking the New York Times
Well,
and all
even the
these
gamers are
websites.
dead articles would be
Yeah,
a good
that's
example
clickbait. Yeah,
too.
where they're just purposely trying to inflame the audience. That way they get views, and like
Yeah,
that's
well, you,
not
you
good.
see YouTube videos do it all the time. Yeah, are you familiar with the Whatever podcast?
I am, and their thumbnails are something else, aren't they?
Yes, they are. But it gets you to click on them. I mean, it
Yeah,
does what it's intended.
yeah.
So I actually, I don't want to do a podcast where we talk about like dating and feminism all the time, but I would like to at some point do a podcast where they have that approach about bringing people on and trying to do something similar to what they do. That would be when I'm done with school, though. While I'm going to school, I just don't have the time for it.
Yeah. Well, hey, dude, let me know if you launch that podcast. I'd actually come on, dude. I'd happy
Oh
to be a
yeah,
guest.
I would be more than happy. I actually occasionally do streams where I just focus on playing the game because I found that like even though I gained a little bit of popularity back from doing GamerGate, a lot of my core audience didn't really want to focus on the politics and stuff. They didn't like me talking about debating religion and atheism and whether or not feminists are bad and all this. They just wanted to see like core gamers. But like I wanted to talk about politics because outside of gaming, that was what my interest was. When I was in the Air Force for 8 years, I just would listen to political talking points and stuff. I would, read news articles. I would listen to guys like Thunderfoot and Amazing Atheist and Young Turks and occasionally some like more conservative YouTubers. And I would just listen to those all the time while I played video games. And so gaming was like just something that I like to do as like a hobby. Whereas what I was passionate about at that for a while is what I used to argue on people on Facebook was like politics and religion because these were like really important things that like dictated how our society functioned. And as I got older and the more time I would invest in politics, the more I started bleeding into my YouTube channel. Well, my audience didn't really like that too much. They wanted to see me focus on video games, but when I would do video game videos, nobody really watched it as much as when I was doing like GamerGate videos and people were talking about politics. So I've had this like kind of like you know time to think about what I want to do with my channel. And I think what I'm going to do is I'll probably set up a separate channel to where I can talk about politics without, and try and be kind of like how we're talking now, very neutral, able to like discuss each other's ideas and shit. I will probably do something like that in the future, and I will be very critical of both sides, whether they're conservative or liberal. And this whole time I'm in school, I've been having to listen to feminist talking points over and over and over again. So I know what the liberal progressive sides have to say. They want to get rid of Thanksgiving. They want to they view capitalism as an evil organization, and here's the reasons why. So I know their talking points now more than ever, and I want to focus on that, but I also want to argue against those talking points, even if I agree with some of them, if that makes sense. So
No, for sure.
eventually, if anything, I kind of want to do like what a mixture of what Destiny and the Whatever podcast does. But I also want to talk about games here and there because that's what I love to do when I'm just unwinding. Like when I'm done, and I'm burnt out with like life. I want to just play some games and have fun. And I think that like doing entertainment streams with video games and movies, there is an audience for that. And so I can like separate my channels. I can have one for politics and one for gaming.
No, that's not a
I
bad
don't.
idea. And seeing something that's like a mix of Destiny and the Whatever podcast too, that could be like a really interesting project. Though, as I'm sure you probably are aware, but I just want to like ask, like, how common do you think the progressives who want to get rid of Thanksgiving are? Are there people on the left who want to get rid of Thanksgiving? How common of a
So
viewpoint do you think that
I'll
is?
say this: when I do these, I've majored in three different majors. One was computer science, which I didn't do very good in, but I tried it just so that way I could learn the code and get a decent job. But I couldn't do past. I struggled at physics and calculus and other stuff. The other two were communications degree and English major because I'm writing those short stories. And both the communications degree or classes and the English classes, all they talk about like is like feminist talking points. And when it comes to something like Thanksgiving, like they have articles. Let me see if I can find one of them in my subfolder where all they talk about is like how Native Americans got fucked over and that Thanksgiving is an evil holiday because it like destroyed what Native Americans had to go through, or it denies what they had to go through. I think. Okay, here we go. I found the article. This is one of the articles that I read for my class. It's called "The Suppressed Speech of Wamasanta James" or Frank James. He was from the Wampanoag tribe, and when we did one essay for this speech, based on what it was, um, I'm gonna deem it to you directly, so you don't have to have it on your server. Everybody in my class was like, "White people are evil. Why do we still celebrate Thanksgiving?" And I was like, just listening to all of them go on and on about that. Like you could tell that these things really rile them up, and like the only thing that they do to present like the opposite side is like, "Well, here's the history of the Pilgrims. They had these views, and here's all the things that the Pilgrims did that were evil to the Native Americans." And it's not like Steven Crowder where he goes and like interviews people and he can like debate the sides. Like, no, they are pushing one direction on that.
Yeah, no, there definitely are people who have this view. I don't deny that at all, and I've encountered them. We've seen it in some of our like pop culture too, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for instance. Their one of their episodes is sort of like their Thanksgiving episode. It's like a Thanksgiving special. Does like portray well, it portrays Thanksgiving like in a somewhat like negative light. I think it's like I'd have to go back and rewatch the whole thing. I think they were a bit more nuanced with it, but they did like have like the idea that like okay, maybe part of the Thanksgiving thing that they were criticizing wasn't like oh Thanksgiving needs to go away forever. Like they weren't saying that, but I think the message sort of it was that it does that our common perceptions of Thanksgiving are uh, are basically kind of like whitewashing what happened after they
Yeah,
all ate, which I think is probably like true. Like,
I think that like when it comes to Thanksgiving, the idea that the Pilgrims and Native Americans got along there is whitewashed in the sense that like it ignores what happened between the colonial settlers and the Native Americans. You know, but like there is certain truths about the way that the settlers and the Native Americans did get along. It's just that like within any sort of like civilization that comes into conflict with another one, there's like all these horror stories. It's kind of like learning about Israel and Gaza. Like you say Israel has done a lot of horrible things to the Palestinians, but how Palestinians have also been like consistently launching rockets into their nation over and over again. And like for the last 50 some years, this has been happening. So if you were to only present the side as like, well, the Palestinians are oppressed and therefore they need to be freed and Israel needs to be destroyed because they're like the Nazis, then you're going to be like turned into this radical who doesn't understand the actual nuance of the argument. And that's like what I've noticed with the Thanksgiving is like white people did bad things, but then you also, by only focusing on the bad things that white people did, you ignore how like the Native Americans would kill each other left and right, and how a lot of the Native American tribes bartered and traded with white guys so that way they could get like weapons to fight back against other tribes. And the concept of buying land was news to Native Americans, so they didn't fully understand that when like white settlers bought the land from them, that it would be basically theirs forever. And I'm not trying to say like white people were innocent by no means. I'm just like pointing out that like the way that they uh, tell the history of it is very one sided. It's designed to get people to be radicalized and turn into progressives. Like one teacher was even like saying like I'm going to get on my soapbox and I'm very proud of this generation because you're rebelling and fighting against like the patriarchy and all this other stuff. It's like you can see where what their intention is when they teach this stuff.
Yeah, and there are, well, I think there is this very bad idea that we need to criticize, and I think we'd probably be in agreement here, where it is this, you could call it like a hatred of white people or whatever it is, but like this,
Anti-white racism.
or yeah, sure, and but also like this hatred of like America and America bad, and like where the fact is like well, my personal view, I should say, my personal view is that going throughout history, groups of people were like pretty awful to each other throughout all of history, and like sometimes people got along and they traded and they merged tribes together, like that happened too. But so there's like peaceful assimilation, but there's also conquest, and like almost every tribe on Earth pretty much has engaged in this conquest and conquered their neighbors and slaughtered people and committed genocides and massacred villages and all sorts of terrible shit all throughout human history in Africa and Europe and Asia and North America and
Yeah,
South America. It's a very common, it's a human thing. It's not a white thing. It's not a black thing. It's not an Asian thing. It's a human thing. And
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
and one group of people, because they also had some like good ideas, like maybe science is good, and creating institutions that are neutral and secular are good, and embracing technology as a way to advance our economy and our society and our military. Like they've adopted some of these like good ideas, and they also got lucky in some ways too. But like because they adopted these good ideas, they were way more successful than the other civilizations, and they just like happened to win out in this game of conquest. And then like partly because they've adopted these really good ideas, they've also become like more secular and more egalitarian societies and less imperialistic societies, right? Like the United States today, like whatever you want to say about it, like I don't think like it is an imperialistic society, and certainly not an imperialistic society in the same way that like the Spanish Empire was,
Or Nazi Germany.
or Nazi Germany. It's a very, very different thing.
I'll give you an example of something I brought up in class to all the feminists that were in there. I wasn't even trying to argue with them. I was trying to just like get them to critically think about what they were talking about. I brought up that how America, for all its flaws, they were the ones that caused the defeat of Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. And I brought up how a lot of people don't know this, but Japan at that time, they were doing their own Holocaust to the Chinese, to Koreans, and the Philippines. They were brutally murdering them, and they had a camp called like Camp Unit 173 or 731, something like
It
that.
was like yeah,
Let me see if it's
awful
Unit
stuff. 731 or something. That's
137 or 173.
Unit 731.
731. Okay, so that camp was like their own little Holocaust camp that had like thousands, if not millions, of Chinese and other neighboring nations that were brought into there, and they did stuff like live vivisections on those people that like where they would like just cut them up and dissect their bodies while they were still alive. And they did this hundreds and thousands of people that died, and they did the rape of Nanking. They did all these marches where they like destroyed all these people and their homes and their lands. And they did it because they deemed the neighboring countries as inferior people, just like the Nazis. But like nobody really talks about that. And when it comes to like America occupying Japan, like we dropped the bomb on them in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that caused them to finally give up on the war. And if we hadn't had done that, and we hadn't gotten into the war with Japan, they would still have a nation that was doing all that to the locals and the Chinese and the Philippines and everything. Just like how Germany would still have been able to like destroy Britain and Russia and just conquest everybody. But the reasons that America got into the war were not necessarily for these noble reasons. We just did it because we were like having political issues with Germany and Japan. Like Japan, we were trying to stop their progress into the Pacific. And so we cut off their oil supplies. And then so Japan decided to attack us, and that led to the war. So I brought this up to the class in order to get them to realize that like America is not like just this evil empire that's throughout history. Like we have occupied Japan, but we stopped them from doing what they were doing to other people. We occupied Germany, and we stopped them from doing to other people what they were doing. And if you look at America the way someone like Hassan Piker looks at America, oh, they just went into Afghanistan and Iraq for the oil. Like, that's not true. There's other reasons that we went into those countries. Granted, they were for the wrong reasons for Iraq, with the WMDs being the search. But let us not forget that Saddam Hussein used chemical warfare to gas thousands of Kurds and other people in his country, the same way that Syria was using chemical warfare to gas people. Like America, for all its flaws as this big superpower, has been basically been the one responsible for the last century for stopping evil countries from doing evil things to its nations. And that's something that the feminists and progressives don't want to acknowledge, because if they do, they'd have to admit that America is not the evil empire from Star Wars that they like to make it out to be.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They are very happy to talk about all the negative aspects of America, and they should, like the
Like
American history,
slavery.
and they should talk about, like, we should learn about slavery in school, and we should learn about the Tuskegee experiments, and I think we do mostly learn about these things in school, in Japanese internment camps. Like America did bad things, but also America has done like a lot of amazing things, and like we don't want to throw out. Um, all of the progress that we made, because like the fact is we live a pretty amazing lives. The fact that we're like able to have a conversation with each other over the internet, even though we live in completely different parts of the world. I don't even know where you live. You don't know where I live. um and we live like pretty luxurious lives compared to all of human history, is like pretty amazing actually. And we live in like a like relatively like free and democratic society with like broad protections for like for our civil liberties and what we can do, and we can worship whatever god we want. We can, or no god at all if we
Yeah.
want to, and we can
I think,
we can own guns too, right? That's an amazing thing
yeah.
too. We have freedom of speech. We have so many different aspects of our society, different freedoms that we've been guaranteed. um and also we have like over like the story of Western civilization, like in part it is the story of like bad stuff happening, but it's also the story of us overcoming those bad things and learning from
Yeah,
them
like
and developing.
fucking when it comes to like slavery, yeah, a lot of white people in the South owned slaves, but a lot of white people in the North fought to get rid of slavery. I mean, maybe they didn't do it because they wanted to; they were kind of forced to. But at the end of the day, slavery in America ended primarily because a lot of white people fought to get rid of it, right? So like that's something that like you won't really have it brought up in that kind of way, because the idea that like white people are the root cause of all evil, it has to be that way. Like that's why like when I brought up the Japanese killing people because they were different than them, that's not white supremacy. That's just another group hating another group of people and using their power to destroy them. The same way the Nazis did to the Jews, the same way Saddam Hussein did to the Kurds, and the same way Russia is doing to Ukraine and so on. And China wants to do to Taiwan. Israel and Gaza, their conflict is primarily about religion, the differences between these two religions that has been around since 2,000 years. Granted, it's in its own unique version of that, because part of the problem with Israel is that these lines of Palestine were created by like the British Empire back in like 1948 or 1942 or 45, one of those eras of that time. But the Israel's guys, the reason that the Palestinians hate them is because they're Jewish that are living in their Holy Land. They hate them because the religion tells them to hate them. That's one of the reasons, like when I was an atheist and I was very arguing about religion, I would focus in on stuff like that because not necessarily Israel and Gaza, but I would focus in about like how it's religion causing people to want to kill themselves. And if you look at like Nazi Germany, they also went after the Jews. Why? Because they were primarily a Catholic organization. With like if you ever go read Mein Kampf has a lot of references to Catholicism and that Jews are the enemy. They were the ones that killed Jesus and stuff. A lot of people who are raised to be anti-Jewish, you'll see a lot of them have like similar views when it comes to religion. Jews destroyed these guys. There's so many things that are about history that are like complex, and if you just reduce everything down to how these progressives want it to be, where it's like, oh, white people are the root cause of everything, you're not only not living in reality, but you're actually sweeping under the rug all these other things that have been the cause of all this conflict in the first place. I think that when it comes to us living in a luxurious society, like we live in a society right now where almost all the problems can be solved very quickly within a few years. Like, go look at like what Mr. Beast was doing, right? You know how he was building wells in Africa? Like, this is something that like anybody could do. All you need to do is just have the money to do it, and he had the money and he did it. These guys created wells in poor areas of Africa so that way they could have fresh water. If we just sat there and we let sometimes I just wish America would take over everything so that way we could just have everything operating under our fucking rules. So that way you wouldn't have the cartels running Mexico. You wouldn't have these what happened to Afghanistan right after we left. The Taliban took over and now women are oppressed again. Like the bad things of America, I don't think outweigh the good things at all. I just think that people are unwilling to look at the good things that America does because they view everything in this Marxist viewpoint that everything is oppressed versus oppressors, and white people are the oppressors, and so everything that anybody does against white people or against America is the oppressed fighting back, and that's not true at all. A lot of it is these guys are just deranged psychopaths that get indoctrinated by these religious and political cultists.
All right. Well, I'm gonna bring it back to GG a little bit.
Yeah, sorry. I just went on a tangent about politics that had
No,
nothing to do
no,
with
no.
GamerGate.
I'm happy to. I think it's good for the book actually to show that like one we can go wherever you want to go, and that tells the audience something about the people involved, the person being interviewed, and also myself too. And it also shows that we are human beings, and that it humanizes the people in the book too. It shows that they're not just like answering a list of questions like a robot, but they're actually a human being there.
Well, let me ask you one of the questions from your question script then.
All right.
Do you think GamerGate was successful in your eyes?
Um, hmm. I think aspects of it were, and I'll say so. To me, GamerGate was mostly about artistic freedom and ethics in games journalism. I know for you, it was a bit more of a culture war thing, and that's totally cool. Like people have different visions of like what GamerGate is. The fact that everyone got involved for different reasons, I think, is interesting and part of the story that's kind of beautiful. Um, but if it was successful on ethics, I think we did some like pretty good stuff. Like we got them to create ethics policies for the first time. We did get a lot of corrections on articles. It did create a pressure on the games journalists to be more careful, I think. So I think that maybe we did have some improvements there. Not as much as we would have liked, but I think there was like some real progress made. And Deep Freeze, of course, Deep Freeze cataloged these issues, so it gave readers in the audience the option to see for themselves. Like, okay, just how corrupt is Kotaku? Or can I trust what Game Informer is saying? And you can go in and see like, all of the issues that Game Informer has had in the past, and whether or not Game Informer has fixed those issues. So it gave the audience a tool to use to determine if these sites are trustworthy or not, and if these specific journalists are trustworthy or not. So that's good. On the creative freedom stuff, yes, I think it was pretty successful. Um, we definitely lost some of those battles, like the change the cover battle, but like that's fine. I think that what ultimately happened though is that we stopped seeing these mobs online attacking game developers um, as much. It really, because remember there was like this period of like the spring of 2015 where it was insane. Every 3 days there'd be some new attack on game developers, like the Lionhead Studios controversy, the Pillars of Eternity controversy, the change the cover controversy with comics. Granted, um, all of this was in the span of like just a couple of weeks or a few weeks. And then after the summer of 2015, maybe it was because the protein world people stood up to them outside of gaming, or maybe it's just because people were starting to focus more on the election or whatever it happened to be. But that basically went away. And then when it comes to the localization of games, um, I don't think they're. I don't pay super close attention to this area like I used to, but it does seem like like, the backlash against Fire Emblem Fates and the massive amounts of censorship that there were in that game. I think they probably did actually change the way some of these companies think about, and also torrential downpour, like the open letters, the million gamer petition, right? Remember that the one? I don't even think it had a million signatures, but the 1 million gamer strong anti-censorship petition when it comes to localizing games. Like I think that actually did have an impact, and I think that a lot of these publishers did start to think about, okay, maybe we should be more careful about how we translate the Japanese artists' original vision into English, and that we
Yeah, I
don't take
remember
out
that.
large swaths of the content for no reason.
I remember AnimeGate having a thing where like they had developers or not developers, they had translators that were putting their own stuff into the translations rather than what actually was being said.
They even did a GamerGate one for Prison School. Remember that? They had the characters in Prison School talk about GamerGate. Even though that was not in the original anime at all. They just like added it in for no reason.
Yeah. By the way, remember how I was telling you about how I'm writing short stories? Shit like that is the reason that I'm injecting some of my own politics into the short stories because I intend to thumb my nose back at the feminists and people who do that type of stuff.
Well, speaking of feminists, it's probably I don't want to. You don't have to answer. You can tell me to shut the fuck up. But you dated um,
Yeah, I don't
JJ
want to talk
Talks
about that
for
too much.
okay. Well, I thought it's interesting because like she wasn't anti-Gamergate necessarily. She was like pretty neutral, or was she even pro? I don't know. Um,
No, she wasn't.
she
She
was
just
neutral,
was
right?
like not even really neutral. No, but anyway, I don't want to talk
Okay.
about that. That's like 8 years ago. I'd rather not go into that one.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
um, the I was just looking up something because we're talking about whether or not you thought GamerGate was successful when it comes to the ethics part, right? Which is what you're kind of really focused on. Um, this is something that just happened. PlayStation will soon remove digital content from players' libraries, even if they paid for it.
Oh
Have you
yeah,
seen that before?
I'm not a fan of that. Though um I don't I don't I wasn't necessarily on board with Gamergate as Gamergate as an entity, right? As a group criticizing industry practices. At the time, I wasn't really on board with that. I was more focused on like games journalism specifically. But there
Gotcha.
are a lot of conversations that do need to be happening. Like that is bullshit. That is fucking bullshit. The people paid money for these games, and now they're gonna lose access to them. And also with I was interviewing Leon Gunsteal. Do you remember him?
No, I don't.
Okay, he was one of the streamers too, the Gamergate streamers, and he was talking about how he paid money for the campaign of like Ace Combat Infinity or whatever, and they shut down the online servers. But when they did so, they took away your ability to play the game single player even because it was like always online. And so he had this game he can't even play, not an MMO, nothing like that, but a game he can't even play, even though he has the single player campaign for it that he paid for. And he's like just fucking pissed about this, and understandably so. And like there's so many different issues in the battle. You brought up loot boxes and all the way that these publishers are trying to scam players, and
Yeah.
it's bullshit. And people should push back on this. I just didn't personally view that as a GamerGate thing, though some people did.
Yeah, well, that was kind of what I was gonna talk about is like when it comes to like whether or not GamerGate won or did anything useful. Like a lot of the problems that were not cultural or related, they still exist, and they've like companies don't tend to not give a shit. So I don't know if GamerGate really was successful in the end about doing anything else more than raising awareness. And when it comes to the culture war aspects, GamerGate lost that battle multiple times, but the end game has been like the culture war when it comes to comics, movies, and video games has seen a lot of successes recently because so many of these movies and shows that came out, people have been hating. So now that the audiences are rejecting them, Disney and like other platforms that like have those movies coming out that like focus on like social justice issues that are very one-sided, or like they have to have like every male character be a bad guy and every female character is big and strong. Like even South Park has come out and making fun of them with their episode about the Pander Stone, and that has been a sign that the war has been seeing a lot of victories in the last couple of years, and I think that you're going to continue to see more of that. And I think that if Gamergate focuses less on people like Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn and Movie Bob and Jim Sterling, and focuses more on just like what they were, their arguments were, then you would have seen a lot more successes. Like when I say their arguments, I'm talking about like the type of games that were coming out and stuff. When it comes to the journalist aspect, I don't, like journalism itself has just really been just flipped on its head. Everybody like Trump was very famous for saying fake news to CNN and all these other guys, and people don't trust news outlets. Actually, I took I think two journalist class, but one of them in particular, I did a presentation in front of the whole class pointing out that like the three most distrusted news sites are CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. And I made a point that like Trump might have been making a good point about everything being fake news. The gaming journalism is just as bad about those other journalists out websites. We were talking about clickbait earlier, so you have seen not necessarily victories, but you've seen pushback, and it's been a continuous pushback. And I think it's just going to be an ongoing problem, regardless of what you call the event is. So it's like a never-ending battle in a way.
So, talking about the culture war stuff, before I have a whole segment on game journalism, but before we get to that, because I don't have I have some culture war adjacent stuff, but nothing like culture war specific. I don't think in this area, in this question list, other than tangentially. So I do want to ask you. So Gamergate to you, a big part of this was that. Oh, sorry. When you say the culture war aspect in games, what exactly do you want to stop happening? I guess I'll ask.
Um,
Or start happening if it's not happening now. With the games themselves.
when it comes to culture war in games,
Yeah.
I don't know because I haven't really focused on that too much lately. Like you've seen, like, okay, well, they have GTA 6 coming out, and like everybody's making a big deal whether or not the main character is trans. Breath of the Wild came out, and everybody was making a big deal whether or not Link was trans. I think that type of stuff, like if people can stop like pushing the politics into the game, that would be a good start. Like Mario rescuing Peach doesn't have to be a feminist talking point. It can just be like what Mario does because Mario is a simple game that is designed to have a simple story and is more focused on the gameplay element. The rescuing of the princess is just a cliche story that has been around for thousands of years, and that's all it needs to be about. You can have games that have strong female characters like Lara Croft or Samus Aran, and you can also have games where the girl is a damsel in distress, like Princess Peach. Or Princess Peach doesn't have to be a damsel in distress, but like saying that if she is a damsel in distress, that is toxic and everything. That's the kind of thing I would like to see gotten rid of. I would like it if people would stop um, making everything like a one-sided. You're either with us or against us, and pushing your politics into that. That would be something, a culture war thing. Like stop trying to co-opt everything into your political side, you know, pandering to people. Like I bring up South Park yet again with the whole pander stone. You know, it's just
Our
the
Pandaverse,
pandering,
right?
yeah, the panderverse, and you know, deliberately making everything into a divisive "you're with us or against us," like what happened with Star Wars. You know, every Star Wars fan is just a toxic white male living in his parents' basement, rather than somebody who hates the fact that they fucked over Luke Skywalker and Han Solo and all these other characters. So you know, it's not really like a one thing. It's kind of just like a continuous problem, and I wish that we could see some like mitigation of that problem.
How much of these movies being bad, like let's say The Last Jedi and the Star Wars sequels, I assume you. Well, I don't know what you think of the other sequel trilogies, the other like, of the Force Awakens and the third one.
I didn't watch the last one. I refused to watch it because everybody already said it was bad, and I was still pissed off with how the Last Jedi was. Force Awakens I thought was pretty okay. Like it wasn't great, but I like when they killed off Han Solo and they didn't even bring back Luke Skywalker until the end. I was just kind of pissed off. I was like, I was really hoping to see all the original characters united, and the way they killed off Han Solo really pissed me off. But uh, the like I saw Solo. I've watched The Mandalorian. I thought The Mandalorian was good, but then I watched some of the other shows, like the Ahsoka show. I thought was pretty bad. Um, I forgot what the other one was that came out that I
Oh,
watched.
Andor or Book of Fett.
Book of Fett, I think. Yeah, that one. Like they have like that one purple haired girl on a motorbike, and she's like supposed to be like a badass, but like Boba Fett like gets like his ass beat constantly. I don't know. It's just stuff like that. Like it's just like it's always yeah. Like I'm at a point where I watch shows with my mom whenever I come to visit her, and I can figure out the plot based on who's which character is going to be like the strong female protagonist. You know, this character is going to be gay because you have to have a gay sex scene in it. You know, it's like that type of stuff. And the Star Wars shows are starting to bleed into that, or have a lot of that bleed into them. Not gay sex, but like similar things.
Yeah, I've not seen the latest ones. I've not seen like Obi-Wan was a fucking disaster, and I've not seen Ahsoka yet though. I did
Obi
see
Wan.
Mandalorian. I liked, and so did I liked Andor too for very different reasons. Like Mandalorian and Andor are like completely different shows. Like Andor is more like Game of Thrones almost, and it's like a deep political saga rather than being. But they do it pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
So,
So,
so how much? Oh God.
go ahead. I was gonna say I got about another maybe 15, 28 minutes in me.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Well, I was gonna ask then just real quick, because we're gonna have so many. We're like 20% of the way done. I'm sorry.
I
Uh,
got you.
yeah. So I do want to ask, how much of this is being ruined? Of these movies are being ruined? Do you think because they're deliberately trying to like pander to certain political ideologies versus them being incompetent writers and incompetent filmmakers?
I think it's a mixture of both. It's like not all of it is the politics. I think they when it comes to the politics, they're leaning in that direction because their market guys tell them that's what the audience wants, and then you have people who are just not very good at writing that are writing the storylines for the characters, and so they just make something where it's it has a political agenda, and it's terribly written. So you know, it's like it's not really one or the other.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about games journalism?
I don't read games journalism anymore. I used to listen to stuff like Zero Punctuation on The Escapist and Movie Bob back when I was like actually liked Movie Bob when I was like in my early 20s. I thought he was like interesting. Now I just don't pay attention to any of those guys because ever since they like started shitting on games or not games, but like gamers, and you know, taking sides. I stopped watching them, and then like most games journalism just bores me. Like occasionally, I'll see somebody make a YouTube video about a video game, and I might pay attention to it, but I don't really even buy new games anymore, so I just don't really have the urge to watch or read about somebody's political or not political, their games journalism on a game anymore. I'm just it's a mixture of being burnt out and just not giving a fuck.
Anything you want to say or talk about regarding censorship of games or the perceived attacks by some people of social justice warriors, quote unquote, trying to take away games or change them drastically, um, stuff like that.
So there was a game that came out a long time ago called Hatred, where you play a mass shooter, and like everybody was talking about how that game shouldn't be released on Steam and everything, and it got released on Steam, and then nothing really came of it. Nobody gave a shit. It was not a very good game. Um, oh, um, my point being is that if a game is gonna succeed, it will succeed on its own merits. It doesn't have to be about politics. You can have a game about a feminist and like her perspective be in the story, and if it's good because the game is good and the story is well done, then it's gonna be great. When you have games like the the Last of Us 2, where they want to focus on like this like beefy mannish looking girl who kills the main character from the first game, and you want to make it a like sympathetic story about a girl who killed everybody's favorite character. I think you're just looking at how to create a game in the wrong direction. And when it comes to that, I guess what I'm trying to say is when it comes to like politics, you can put it in a game. You just need to like make sure that you are kind of careful and you are contemplative of how you input in your politics. Like The Last of Us, they shoehorned in a lesbian romance, and so the second game just like went double down on the lesbian romance and made it where like anybody who was against them was the bad guy. And I was like, this makes me not want to play the game because I don't give a shit about that. But like they could say I'm not the core audience or I'm not the target audience, which is fine. Then if somebody makes a game where I am the target audience, I get to have that game get made and I get to be able to support that game, and you don't get to do anything about it because you already have your games being made for your political clique.
So, is your main contention then that there aren't that the people who want these specific kind of games, like the games with like that explore like lesbian romance stories and things like this, that some of those people at least aren't okay with you having other types of games that are more like about whatever it is that you what kind of games would you want to have that you're not getting? I guess I'll ask.
Considering I don't really play games anymore as much, unless it's like a game that I like Half Life or
Dude, I'm playing Half-Life 2 right now. Like literally, not right at the moment, but like yes, like 2 days ago I was playing it.
yeah, it's like kind of like saying like, what do you want? And I don't care anymore because I gave up a long time ago. I don't know. Like I'm not interested. I never played GTA 5, even though everybody said it was a great game, and so I'm not interested in GTA 6. I just don't care. I'm apathetic at this point. I have a few games that I like to play, and I like playing like old school games that I grew up on that were like Sonic the Hedgehog and stuff, where they're just like about simple having fun. And I've played a few games like the one game, Spec Ops: The Line, which was very critical of the American military and very critical of Call of Duty games. And like everybody talked about how important this game is as a message about deconstructing the action hero stuff. And I thought like when I first heard about it, I thought, hey, that sounds kind of interesting. I'll give it a try. And then when I played the game, I was bored, and I was like, this isn't that good. The action wasn't all that great, and the mechanics weren't all that great. So, I just like I don't care anymore. I like playing games that are multiplayer games, like fighting games or some shooting games. Like there's a game called 7 Days to Die. I like playing that with my friends because it has a crafting mechanic and it's a zombie survival game, and I can just play with my friends. That's what I care about. Like most of these people that want to do a game where it's like a 20-hour story epic. I just don't want to. I don't even want to invest my time in it anymore. There's just more important things in the world that I care about.
All right, and I'm just going to ask some quick questions here because I know we would get through this. Some people say that GamerGate was a harassment campaign. Do you think that that was true? And if not,
To
why?
some extent, yeah, there was some truth to that. I mean, I got doxxed because took issue with people and GamerGate on the pro GamerGate side, and um, like I absolutely believe that like people were harassing people. It's just that the people who were harassing people, those motherfuckers should have a bullet in the back of their head, and then like we should just move on as a society after we cleanse the trash out. Okay, more. All right, that's not real. What I really will say is that there was harassment that was going on. It was just happening from both sides. Like some people got like rape and death threats that were pro Gamergate from like these like feminist anti Gamergate guys, and there was people who were on the feminist side, like that one voice actress who came out against Gamergate, and she got like doxxed like the same day.
Oh,
I can't
Felicia
remember her
Day.
name. Yeah, that's the one. Like there was like fucking scumbags that were just doing that type of shit, and in my opinion, if you dox somebody, you deserve to get killed. But that's just me.
Yeah, there were people. I got doxxed too actually during GamerGate.
Yeah. So like harassment definitely was a part of it. I'm not going to deny that. I don't think it was the crux of the issue. I think because like it's like you look at like how the Trump versus Biden election went down. Like there was bad actors who were Antifa, and then there was bad actors who were like the January 6th Trump supporters. There's bad actors on both sides, and nobody wants to like acknowledge the bad actions that were taken by those guys. It's the same thing that happened with GamerGate.
All right, I want to be mindful of your time.
I got time. We can just burn through these questions. I just won't like go on long tangents like I was doing earlier.
Well, I'm skipping a fuck ton of them already because you said you don't there's not much you really want to talk about regarding games journalism and stuff. So, have you seen the new
Yeah.
documentary that just came out, the Airplay documentary?
No, I don't know anything about that.
Oh, it's worth checking out. The part one is an incredible experience. It's for free, but part two you have to pay $10 usually, but it's on sale right now for 5 for part two. It's a pretty good documentary about the whole
Oh, just
GamerGate thing.
send me a DM and I'll look at it.
Yeah.
So
Did you interact with any anti-GamerGate people?
yeah, I was thinking of giving you that stream. This one guy whose name was like Helicopter Guy.
No, please
You
send it to
know
me, dude.
him,
Please.
okay?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I'll give you that stream. That was a funny stream. I did like a couple with him, and like he just was like autistic as fuck. But how I don't remember if I think I only have one copy of it. Yeah, Helicopter Guy. This was back. This streamed September 12th. So this was right around the time that I was starting to kind of get bored with Gamergate, but I was arguing with like people who were anti-Gamergate because I was just well, here's what I think wrong about your talking points. So I'll put that in your public research.
Thanks. I just DM'd you the Airplay documentary part one, and I also sent you. You can watch it just the documentary itself, or if you want, you can watch the documentary with commentary from the filmmaker and myself. Because I did a watch party with the filmmaker where him, as well as an anti-Gamergate person and well, two anti-Gamergate people and a pro-Gamergate person, Porcelain Chips. Um, we all watch it
That guy
together.
sounds familiar. I think Porcelain and Chips is in another server I'm in.
Oh, and Lord Nurgle server.
Not my server. It's just a server that I'm in.
Oh, yeah, helicopter
So
guy. Him. We've talked about him a lot with this project actually, because he ended up like debating every single person in GamerGate practically. So he debated like a ton of the people I've interviewed. either online and
Yeah.
text, either on text on like Reddit, because he was a big Reddit debate guy. He was on like the debate subreddits like every single day debating people, or he would debate them on live streams too. Even like as you know,
Yeah. I had a shorter video than the one I just linked you with helicopter guy. And I'm trying to see if I can find it. I was like him being like autistic as fuck, and I just took like 30 minutes out of it. I think it was titled like "Not No True Feminist" or something, because he was like saying how like if you're a part of GamerGate, you can't be a feminist, and I was like, wait a second, now that doesn't make sense.
that's right, he did say that.
And
Or
I
well, I
called
don't
and
know.
I
Wait, he
and
used to say. Well, I don't know if he said that specifically with me, but what he did say was like, GamerGate is right wing because even if you're left wing on everything else, the fact that you are on the pro GamerGate side inherently makes you right wing. I'm like, well, wait, what? And I was actually
that
more.
time I
I
was
was.
like, he would say shit like that to me, and I was like very liberal at that time. So I was like, hold up, wait a second, this doesn't fucking make any sense. Your arguments are basically boiling down to a no true Scotsman. And because I was so not indoctrinated, I was so entrenched in the atheist versus Christian YouTube world. I had seen, I just found a video of me and him. There we go. Um, I had seen so many arguments about No True Scotsman. I knew that in and out. So I read the No True Scotsman to him verbatim. And I took a clip of that stream, and I'm giving it to you right now. This was here I see who I originally had the video on. This was on somebody else's stream, not my own. And this is how I first met him. And then the one that I did with him, he brought his friend on, and that was like an 8-hour stream. And the thing was, is I was doing all these streams when I was like in the military. I was in like my last year being in the military. We were being separated discharge, even though it was honorable discharge, because the Obama administration had done all these military budget cuts. And so I was kind of being forced out of the military because of the budget cuts. So I was just like, I'd given up caring about like my military career at that point. And so I was just like, well, all right, I'll do an 8-hour stream with you until 2 in the morning for no fucking reason.
Dude, we did so much. Dude, there were so many streams like that too. Like I've done a couple of too. Though there was at least one instance where we did like an 8-hour stream and we hit the 8-hour cap, and then I did like another 4 hours after that on like a second person's channel, and then there was like another stream after that, but that was too navel gazing even for me. So I didn't do the third portion of it. But we went like 16 hours, and the whole thing went like 20 hours probably. Like it was like some insane like marathon of streams. It was
So I
ridiculous.
found the first stream that I did with the uh, helicopter guy, and it was on JK's stream channel. So I linked you that if you want to watch that later on your own.
Yeah, I'll probably I don't know if I'll watch them, but I'll definitely download them because I do I'm so GamerGate brained out with all the shit I've been working on. Because it's GamerGate every day for me
Yeah.
because I'm doing this
I
project, you know.
I've taken a few streams where I was um I've taken a few streams where I was like part of somebody else's YouTube channel, and I downloaded that so that way I have it as like a backup.
All right.
So
So, did you ever change anyone's mind on GamerGate?
no. Well, no, actually, my friends in real life, I did. They would watch my streams and they would see how the bad actors were on the anti Gamergate side were, and so they basically they didn't really become pro Gamergate as much as they just became like anti Gamergate.
The GamerGate discussion was widely censored across a large number of websites. Why do you think that was?
This is the same reason that they fucking censor Trump supporters, and like you have guys like Vivek Ramaswamy calling it out. I
About
guess if that
about
doesn't
what?
explain it, what I mean to say is like if you have people who are making arguments against something, you'll have people who are censoring it, for political reasons. So when the reason I said that, the Trump supporters. You had people like, okay, when COVID was coming out, right? COVID was like, you had people who were questioning the COVID vaccines and everything. Whether or not you agreed with any of that, that's a different story. But you had people who were at least criticizing Fauci and the COVID vaccines. Then they would be censored because they were like considered anti-science. And now we've had a couple years to go by since the quarantine happened and COVID, and a lot of these criticisms about the COVID, like the fact that it came from China and probably came from specifically a lab in Wuhan where they were practicing like mixing DNA and stuff. Like originally that wasn't allowed to be talked about, but now everybody kind of does talk about it. That's the same thing that happened with Gamergate. They were trying to censor people because it went against a certain narrative, and so they were like trying to censor them. Some of it was because of harassment, but a lot of it wasn't.
Do you have any thoughts on Not Your Shield?
Not Your Shield was what made me side with Gamergate. I actually included them in my extra credits video. That was a big part of the ending of it. Let me see if I can go find my extra credit video so you can watch it later if you want to.
Yeah, I'll probably download most of these you send me, if not all of them. Or most of them, at least.
That'd be a good idea, especially if you're trying to keep an archive of stuff. Because as a character in a show, I really liked once said, "You never know when an inconvenient truth is going to slip under the cracks." That was a character from Babylon 5.
Oh, which character was it? I like Babylon 5.
Londo.
Dude, Londo's a great character. So is Jakar.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Their relationship is the best part of the show, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there.
How they hate each other and then they wind up becoming allies. It causes one to change the other. Looking for my extra credit video. I have it unlisted. I just got to go find it.
What do you think about how the media covered Gamergate?
I mean, it's one of the big reasons I got involved in the Gamergate was just the fact that like the media coverage was so terrible. Like when I first hear about it, I'm looking up articles that say gamers are horrible pieces of shit that dox and harass women, and then I see what people like Internet Aristocrat were saying, and I'm like, hold on, whoa, hang on, what are you doing here? This isn't true, you know. So it was just more classic corruption and sweeping things under the rug.
Are there any journalists are there any journalists you think did a good job covering Gamergate?
Besides David Pakman? I don't know. No, he's the only one that comes to my mind.
You said you don't remember. We talked off air a little bit. If you don't mind me bringing this up, you said you don't really remember Airplay too much.
Yeah, I remember that Milo Yiannopoulos got into a heated debate with the
Koretsky.
What's his face, the host, and then like that they were arguing about ethics and whether or not the culture war had anything to do with ethics in games journalism. But that's about all I can remember from it.
Are there any specific articles or videos you want to discuss?
Nah, I mean we've covered a lot of stuff in this conversation.
Yeah, I'm skipping a bunch unless you want me to go through and do every single question. But like I know you
No,
said
no,
you
no. You're picking out good questions.
Okay.
So I'm also giving you a lot of my early GamerGate videos, like they're like the ones I did where I was me and my friend were doing a discussion with each other, and it was when I first started talking about it. You can watch some of those and see that I was a lot more like open-minded and even-handed about how I would talk about the subject.
Well, your extra credits video was a very popular video, maybe even like one of the most viral Gamergate videos out there. I would see it all the time popping up in like my recommended feed, and it got a lot of views. Did anybody in the media reach out to you as being?
No. Actually, I did have one person from like a mainstream outlet follow me on Twitter when I started just going off the rails and talking about like all this nihilistic shit, and they started following me. And at that point, I was like, I just need to get rid of my Twitter.
If a journalist who got GamerGate wrong, in your view, is reading this now, what do you want them to reconsider?
Um, hmm. I would say maybe they can reconsider with their own bias. Like what I've had. I mean, that's what I've reconsidered ever since I got out of GamerGate and stopped talking about it, whether or not I was in the wrong. There was a video, and I can't find it. I was on somebody's stream, and this is when this is before I started trolling people in GamerGate. I was nearing my time in the military, and I was on somebody's stream. I think it was a guy named Dan. Um, and on the stream, I just was like they were talking about some issue about some journalist or some game issue or whatever, and I was pointing out that like nobody cares, like everybody just doesn't give a fuck. And I was like questioning, what are we even doing here? Like, why are we wasting our time? And that was like when I had been talking with my best friend about like how, like even though like we were getting involved with a conflict that was viral, like it didn't seem to be going anywhere. All the talking back and forth just seemed to be just wasting everybody's time. And the only thing is like you would have people who would like get entertainment maybe out of it, but nobody would actually change their viewpoints. So when I say reevaluate your bias, it's just kind of like what I did. I mean, I used to be a Christian who became an atheist, and now I'm an atheist who's become agnostic, who reconsiders whether or not there might be some truth to religion. So I'm constantly reevaluating my own politics. I used to hate Trump. I voted, you know how my politics were? I voted for Clinton the first time around. Then I voted for Trump the second time around. I voted for Hillary because I didn't want Trump to win. Then I voted for Trump because I didn't want Biden to win. So I was constantly reevaluating my politics. And I think if a journalist can do something like that, reevaluate what they think about and why, as long as there's like some truth to what their positions are, then I think that would be a good thing.
What do you think the media? Well, you kind of already answered this, but it is a different question and could have a different answer. So I'll give you a shot with it.
Go
What do
for
you
it.
think the media can learn about how they covered from GamerGate and do better in the future, and how they cover future similar incidents?
What could the media learn going forward? For one thing, stop with the clickbait titles that are meant to slander one side instead of like talking about something objectively. Like when the gamers are dead articles, like that's the shit that like got everybody inflamed. Like even Angry Joe, who was not a GamerGate supporter and was kind of anti GamerGate, he flat out said that those articles just took a dumpster fire and poured extra gasoline onto it. So, like, people who did those articles were probably what caused the gamers, because they were on the gaming outlets that people that would go to, and like Gamma Sutra and Polygon and stuff. Don't do what those guys did. Learn from their mistakes. And those mistakes were demonizing an entire group of people, especially your core audience.
Have you seen the GamerGate Wikipedia article?
I haven't looked at the GamerGate Wikipedia article in a long time. I know that they were constantly like moving information around on it and like constantly criticizing stuff back when I used to look at it.
Yeah, it's pretty much entirely one-sided now. There used to be some attempt because there were people trying to make it more fair, but now they lost that battle years ago, and now it's yeah.
Yeah, well, that you just reminds me of something. I was talking about how I was in a journalism class.
Yeah.
They brought up Gamergate in one of my assignments. It was in the book that we were reading, and they were saying like Gamergate made an argument that it was about ethics, but what it was really about was harassing women. And then the question for one of my essays was like, in your opinion, why was Gamergate actually about harassing women and not about ethics? And I was just like bullshit. This is a bullshit question. And I wrote a big slanted rant about it, and I was like, this fucking article is bullshit. And I pointed out, what their source was in the book for that, where they're talking about Gamergate? It was fucking Gawker.
Oh my god, dude! Holy shit!
I wish I still had that book. I took pictures of it when I first was taking the class, and I shared it with some of my mutual friends from the Green Grapist. By the way, I should mention real quick before I go any further. The guys from the Green Grapist said that I have to tell you that I am the leader of Green Grapist.
Oh, of course you are. Well, so hey,
Of course,
I don't want I didn't I was going to ask, and then I'm like, no, we're too pressed for time. It doesn't really matter anyway. But won't some of like the more if somebody's more sensitive, not like I get it, you made not you made the Green Grapist, but you guys used the Green Grapist podcast. It was kind of a joke name. I
yeah.
thought it was
The
funny,
actual joke of it
but
came from the whitest kids you know.
yeah, and if somebody's more sensitive, they're like, well, one of these GamerGate podcasts, it wasn't even a GamerGate podcast. It was a podcast that occasionally talked about GamerGate. Um, but they have grapist in their name. Isn't that sexist? What if somebody says that to you?
I would tell them that where the origin comes from. The whitest kids you know, they had a skit where this guy was like the promoting a grape drink, and he was like, "I'm the grapist," and it was like that, like everything that he said was like as an innuendo for rape. And then they were making a joke about like how the board meeting seeing this commercial, like, oh, everybody's on board with it except for one guy who's like, isn't this like kind of bad? So that was a humorous little joke that was from that particular thing. And me and my best friend were joking about that on Facebook when I got in an argument with one of my other friends from high school's girlfriend at the time. And because she was mad at us for using that grapist thing, I was like, you know what? We're just gonna fucking make. We're. I told everybody in the Skype group that we were part of, and then we're like, oh, we should just call ourselves the Green Grapist because we're just gonna piss everybody off. So I would say have a sense of humor. Not everything that's important has to be like can't be taken seriously. You can make edgy jokes. South Park does it all the time, and people enjoy it.
Dude, I'm all for edgy jokes, man. I'm tired of people who are trying to police comedy, trying to police every aspect of our lives.
Yeah,
I
Dave
just
Chappelle makes edgy jokes all the fucking time, and people love him for it. So that
what do
would
you
be what I would say. Like, the Green Grapist, we were like, it was kind of a pun on Gamergate because it was GG, right? So we were like the GG podcast.
So when you brought up this topic with your, did you bring it up
I
with your
also,
teacher or?
before you ask that question, I'll also say we haven't done anything with that in years. And the other than a Discord group where we all would occasionally hang out and discuss politics, like that whole thing just died a long time ago. So
So did you when you had you saw this part of your assignment at school that you were supposed to take an anti-Gamergate stance as part of this assignment, and you basically stood up for Gamergate and pointed out that what they were saying in the textbook wasn't true. Um, did you get any pushback on that? Did you have a conversation with your teacher? Did they give
no,
you
the
a good grade
professor
still?
mostly ignored it. I brought up Gamergate one more time towards the end of the semester. I actually said, "Hey, look, you're a journalist. If you'd like to know who the people were that started Gamergate and everything, if you wanted to like do like an article about it," and she was like, "No, I don't want to get doxxed." And I was like, "Okay." So, but she had no clue what it was about. She just like was just giving an assignment based on what the book was.
Uh, has your conscious experience as a human? Actually, wait, sorry, I skipped one. Would you like to see, quote, the narrative, unquote, on Gamergate change in your lifetime?
Hmm. It would be nice. Well, you know what? I've seen some people come out like the Act Man. What's the other podcast I was just recently listening to? Like where they talk about Gamergate and they're like, "This is what Gamergate was actually about." That guy Stuttering Craig, who has his new talk show, the Side Scrollers podcast. Him and Angry or not Angry Joe. Him and Razor Fist. Occasionally would talk about Gamergate. Yeah, Side Scrollers podcast. So I've seen people come out, and Clifton Duncan was another guy. He was interviewing Mr. Medicare, and they were talking about how like the views on gamers and GamerGate had kind of shifted over time. So I do appreciate when people like are willing to look at it with like the same kind of view and lens that I did. Um, do I really am I emotionally invested in it more to where I would care to see it? No, not really. When I do see people talk about it, I mostly just kind of like take note of it and then I move on with my day. But it would be nice if people were to acknowledge that like not everybody that was a gamer that was involved with Gamergate was like an evil harasser.
Has this narrative that people like you were evil harassers, has that has that harmed your conscious experience at all?
No, not too much. I just basically would just use it as like what it means to say fuck you to the people who say that. I'm just kind of like, you can go, get fucked. I don't know. It's I when I was in the military, been I had come out as an atheist that I didn't believe in religion anymore after being raised as a Christian, and I was ostracized and surrounded by conservative Christians that hated me for being an atheist. So after dealing with that, I don't really give a fuck what people have to say about me because I supported Gamergate.
What's your favorite video game?
Oh, that's a tough one. I really like Alien Isolation, man. That's a good. That game is great in my opinion. It's got the great amount of like horror mixed together with other elements. Other games I really like would be like Half-Life, Black Mesa. Um, I don't know. Yeah, probably. Probably one of those games. I also really like 7 Days to Die. That's a fun one.
Did,
And I also really, what was a really good one was Sonic Mania. That was a game that was made for like original fans of the Sonic franchise that I really appreciated that they took, and made it for. A non-official game I really like is Mushroom Kingdom Fusion. That's the one I did the Let's Plays on. That was what I did fucking for years as a YouTuber. I just did Let's Plays on that game. Not many people would know about it, so I didn't get a lot of views on it. But that game is like a Mario fan game where you just have all these different characters from different franchises, whether it's Link, Mega Man, Sonic, and they all kind of play together in a different way. And I did a recent Let's Play of it with my when I started coming back onto YouTube because some of the guys from that channel had commented on me on my videos, letting me know, hey, we've done a new version of it, and it's been a really, really good game. If I was going to recommend a game for people that like video games, I would say that one. If you like side scrollers and stuff,
can you give us the name again one last time?
Mushroom Kingdom Fusion.
All right.
I'll link you my playlist for the updated version of
You
it.
can post it publicly if you want. If other people want to check it out too.
Yeah, I can do that.
Dude, Alien Isolation, dude, that's a scary ass fucking game. That might be like the scariest game I've ever seen in my entire goddamn life. I love horror games, but dude, holy shit. Holy fuck, dude. I can't even beat that game, dude. I
That's
can't
one
even
of the
play it by
only
myself.
games. That's one of the only games that legit give me nightmares. Like I've had so many nightmares where I would like be on a space station, and all of a sudden you see the dark figure, of the alien, come running around, and it's like that. I think that just like the way that the game is set up, where you're like unable to do anything if it gets you, and you're like constantly moving around in the dark, and you're like wondering where it's at. Like it's really good at tapping into those primal fears.
Yeah, dude, I still remember like some of like the fucking terrifying moments, dude. Holy fuck. Like oh, dude, so I was trying to like make, you know how you like hack open the doors?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I've got the motion tracker out. I'm looking, and my back's to this locked door, right? And I'm like, okay, all right, I think it's clear. I think it's clear. And then I hack open the door, and I see like the tail and like the feet of the alien like walking right past the doorway right as it slides open. I'm like, oh
Oh no.
fuck, oh fuck.
One of the worst things you hear is when you're trying to hack the door. All of a sudden, you hear, you know you're fucked. You hear that hissing noise, and all of a sudden the squeal, and you're like, "Oh, can I get out of this in time?" Oh, nope, there it goes. It just killed me.
Do you play tabletop RPGs at all?
Not really. I did a couple times. One of the guys that I met in GamerGate, his name was Shikaki. Do you remember him?
Mr. Shikaki?
Yeah,
Yeah, I know him.
we actually met up in real life because we don't live very far from each other, or at least we at that time. It's a little different now, but we met up in real life, and he bought me a packet for Magic the Gathering, and then he was teaching me how to play it.
Yeah, I used to play Magic back in the day. I mean, I still have cards, and like I still play occasionally, but not like I used to. The Alien RPG though, it's actually like a phenomenal product. Like it's a very well designed RPG rule set. The book is beautiful. Like the artwork on it is really great. The scenarios are really interesting, and you can make your own scenarios too. Like it's just like a really great product that I've come to appreciate. My friend, I've got two RPG groups right now currently, and that's one of them. And we play that game all the time.
I linked you to playlist in your general. This is Mushroom Kingdom Fusion.
So you met up with Shikaki. Did you ever go to like any other like meetups or anything like that for GamerGate?
No, I never did any meetups, but I did meet up with a couple people that I met through GamerGate. One of them was my ex girlfriend, who we mentioned earlier, and then of course there was another guy. His online profile was Nick. He was in a lot of my streams, and then there's people that I've met through GamerGate that like I'm close friends with now. Like we call each other on the phone and discuss stuff a lot. So, but I never went to a meetup. I would just kind of like meet people, and then like we would become friends after a while, and then we would talk with each other, about personal shit, about like, our struggles in life and stuff. And of course, politics.
Do you have any thoughts on Vivian James or other GamerGate related art projects?
I always liked the Vivian James art project. I don't know, or the character Vivian James. Um, I don't know if the history about her color scheme being based on the Piccolo raping Vegeta or whatever is true, but I thought like as far as like a gaming icon, she seemed to have the right sort of like avatar for it. It was like a kind of burnt out ginger head. Gingers are often considered like to be the like unlikable people. So it's kind of like, hey, so this person's not only a ginger, but they're a girl with like a bad attitude. And I was like, that kind of sounds like a Gamergate kind of person, like a game, not a Gamergate person, a gamer person, a persona. You're just kind of like you're a normal person and you're just kind of burnt out on stuff.
Yeah, I love her as a design, and she's obviously become like extraordinarily like iconic. Um, I think like you said too represents like kind of like a gamer person. Like what I think of when I think of gamers, I think of someone like Vivian James.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the Piccolo dick thing, dude. Oh my god, that's come up a couple times now because like some of the anti-Gamergate people don't really care about it. Um, but they bring it up like as a joke or to fuck with us. Or Pinko Merchant brought it up because I guess he wanted to like fuck with us. Like the fact is, like, it doesn't look like we'll ever know why, if that was true, if that was the reason. But like, also, like, who gives a shit? Like, nobody actually really cares. It seems.
It really
It
shouldn't
was a
be
funny meme. It
reaching.
was a fucking hilarious meme, dude. You've got Piccolo. You got Piccolo going in, and I don't even know if it's rape, right? Because like it could be consensual. There's no reason to think it's inherently rape, but Piccolo and Vegeta having sex with each other. Well, Piccolo fucking Vegeta in the ass really hard over and over again. Like that's fucking hilarious, dude. This the fact
Yeah.
that this was a meme and it was spread around deliberately to fuck with people, and like it became this hilarious joke that like everyone
And
has
if
seen
you
at
were
some
a
point.
big Dragon Ball Z abridged fan, like they had a lot of rape jokes that were in that, like Cell with being like a rapist who's like, I want to absorb Android 18. Just look at the clothes she's wearing. She's just asking to be absorbed. Like they had like a lot of that type of humor in like Dragon Ball Z fandom. So it's not like it's just people on the internet coming up with like weird shit. And of course, on the internet you constantly see characters like you have the Frozen GamerGate sings it now. I'm looking at it right now on the Discord.
Yeah.
There is so much artwork of like the Frozen character being like having like dicks and stuff like that, and like you see that type of degeneracy online all the fucking time. So you seeing Piccolo fuck Vegeta in the ass, like granted it wasn't something that I wanted to see, but it was pretty funny.
All right. We're really nearing the end.
For sure.
What was your favorite moment during GamerGate?
The GamerGate carols caroling. I told you about that before, where we all started singing Christmas songs. Let me see if I can find it. It was on the Green Grapist podcast. Gamers go caroling. Did they take? Is the YouTube site not up anymore? I hope it is. Let me see if I can find it. Oh man, I think they took the YouTube down, or it got maybe it got taken down.
Well, YouTube has become extraordinarily censorious of the word grape. Well, not the word grape itself, but the one without the G. They've become
Yeah.
extremely censorious about that. It's still okay to say, but you can't make money off videos that include the word, I think.
That kind of that sucks. 'Cause that was what it's for anybody who's listening that doesn't know what it is. That particular stream was where we were like, "Hey, everybody, set aside your arguments and everything, and anybody who wants to come on, whether they're pro GamerGate or anti GamerGate, we're gonna just sing songs and like do like a karaoke night because it was the Christmas season." And that was when I got QQ to sing "Let It Go" from Frozen with me.
Well, if you ever find that, please send it to me. It'll be amazing. I
Yeah,
would love to have that. If
I'm
you
gonna I'm
could,
gonna text my friend Craig, see if we still have it up.
I know Craig too. I reached out to him, but he never got back to me about doing an interview.
Oh,
But
he's
I've already
been
got
busy.
I've got so many people now anyway that I don't know if I'd add him anyway. No offense to Craig, um, but I got so many goddamn people, dude. I still have to do like another
Yeah,
dozen interviews. I've already done almost 40 probably.
I'll just text him. I'm looking for the.
Well, hey, if you could change one thing about Gamergate, Lieutenant Sarge, what would it be?
The way people would argue and like dox each other, like that type of behavior, I would definitely say us. Whether you're pro GamerGate or anti GamerGate, like you don't need to destroy people's lives because you have a disagreement online.
What would you personally have done differently during Gamergate?
Not get emotionally invested. Get like get letting that get me riled up and get angry with people rather than just being like treating it kind of like how I've seen other people who are more successful online. They just kind of like let shit slide off their back.
Let's say it's 10 years from now, and an online movement is looking to Gamergate for guidance for their movement. What advice do you have for them?
Protect your identity because people are assholes, and regardless of whether or not I think doxing is bad, people are still going to do that shit. So protect your identity, and try to make allies, not enemies. You do have to sometimes um, put your foot down and say enough is enough. This person is a horrible person, and I don't want to deal with them. And I did that with a few people. But if you can remain friendly with people, um, and you can talk about your ideas of what you disagree with, you'll find that like most people can get along with each other even if they disagree with like their politics and stuff.
True.
I mean, that would be like my best advice is protect your identity and then try and make friends, not allies. I mean, friends, not enemies. Sorry.
What have you personally learned from Gamergate?
Um, that arguing online is kind of a futile task in of itself, unless you're a very big YouTuber with a lot of pull.
Do you see parallels between Gamergate and the way society currently discusses issues?
Oh, absolutely, and we've mentioned it a lot. I brought up the COVID. I brought up the Star Wars: Last Jedi movies. People have argued the way Gamers Are Dead articles were released, and the people would argue about Gamergate and censor it and stuff. That type of behavior online has just been like all throughout the internet scene for the last decade. I'm looking at a video right now that has Hassan Piker and Ethan Klein on it, and the way that those guys have had a falling out with each other is very similar to how people back in Gamergate had a falling out.
What do you think of the decentralized and leaderless nature of Gamergate?
Hmm. I think having there are some people that are natural born leaders and some people that work better as followers, like they don't like to be in the limelight. Having a good mix of strong leaders is important, but you have to not let your ego get in control. Like if you have 20,000 or 10,000 followers or even just 500 followers, if you let your ego get in control and you just constantly think that you're in the right, then people will eventually turn on you and destroy you. You look at what's happening to Hassan Piker right now, where his own audience is turning against him over and over and over again, and he's just making a fool of himself. That guy was I think he still is the most popular Twitch streamer out there, and yet everybody makes fun of him because they can't stand his behavior and his arguments online. If you're a person who's trying to be a leader and but you constantly make terrible arguments, you need to reassess what you're saying and how you say it. As far as whether or not you need to have a Gamergate leader in of itself, you can have a leaderless movement. And part of what made Gamergate strong was that there wasn't central figures. But also, somebody like Internet Aristocrat, as much as he always was trying to buck being the figurehead of Gamergate, he kind of was the person that started it. I mean, Adam Baldwin coined Gamergate by watching his videos, and I actually have a slight screenshot of when Mr. Medicare was signing off because of the cancer killing him. Adam Baldwin
No, he's
said,
still alive for now. Oh, you mean Total
he's
Biscuit?
still.
I'm sorry. I thought you about. Sorry, I thought you were talking about Jim for a minute there.
Oh yeah, no, no. I have a link to a deleted tweet of when Adam Baldwin said goodbye, Ghost Rider to Jim. I'll drop it in your thing right now. Adam Baldwin's Twitter account is no longer there, but it's not showing up. Let me see if I can find it. While I find it, I'll just say Gamergate doesn't necessarily. It could be an online movement, doesn't need leadership, but a lot of people do want to have somebody who can speak up for them. So having a leaders is also important. The military functions because you have strong leaders that would be there for them. And as much as Internet Aristocrat did not want to be a leader and he was against that because he was part of the old school thinking for 4chan and Anonymous, that it was all about keeping the anonymity going. He was by from what most people saw, the leader of Gamergate for a while.
Would you want to do a Gamergate reunion, sort of a big meetup once every 10 years or something like that?
Um, I don't know, man, because I've put Gamergate behind me a lot, so it's not something that I really think about anymore, and I'm not as emotionally invested in. But if I wanted to say meet up with people on like a stream or something, and people wanted to do like a 10-year anniversary and just shoot the shit about like what they've been up to in life, I probably would be down to do something like that.
Yeah, if we do a meetup, we probably what we would do is we would do we would do it in real life, but then we'd also like live stream too.
Yeah.
They did that at a convention I went to recently, SimuCon. It's a uh, multi-user dungeon convention, and they live stream the convention basically. Well, part of it. Like they have like so they have like a it's a convention center, right? So it's like obviously a big thing with multiple different rooms and panels and blah blah blah. But then they also have like a setup area where it's like this is like the live stream area where it's like a broadcast and people like walk up and like wave into the camera and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
And maybe have it set up too so like people could do like call-ins and stuff and
Yeah,
talk to the
yeah. No,
people.
that would be cool.
Yeah. Uh
I think, yeah. Go ahead. Next
no no.
question.
Oh, are you sure?
I was going to say, I think that if we just did a stream, and I knew the people that were on there, and I was friends with them, I'd probably be willing to come on. But like when it comes to like talking about GamerGate as like do what people want to meet up and do like a big discussion about it, I probably wouldn't go to that one just unless I felt like I had really something important to say.
Yeah, or maybe we shouldn't do the stream because some of the people there probably want to be anonymous if we do a meetup. So I don't know. We'll talk about
Yeah.
it with the meetup organizer, the reunion organizer can figure that out. And it's
Well,
probably not going to be me.
remember what we were talking about before the stream started about the GamerGate meetup when Arthur Chu said like it ends tonight, and so then they had a bomb threat.
I think he said that about AirPlay, not about the GGN. There were two meetups that
Oh
got
yeah,
bomb threats.
you're probably right on that. I might be
Plus
getting my
AirPlay.
timelines mixed up.
Yeah, because he has the there was a bomb threat also at a meetup at GGN DC, and there was also one of the
Yeah,
Australian ones got a bomb threat too, I believe.
yeah. I'll link you the video I have where we were. It was like my first. It was my first stream about GamerGate, and it was about the GamerGate bomb threat. That was what we were talking about. So sometimes we would show stuff on the screen of what was going on.
Have you ever? I know you said that you're not too focused on the GamerGate stuff anymore, but have you ever thought about writing a book or other project or doing another project relating to GamerGate? Like a
No, no, but the books I want to write are all like fiction. I have politics infused into them, and I might reference stuff that I learned from GamerGate, but like I'm just not interested in doing more GamerGate stuff anymore. It's like I got burnt out on it back when I was doing it, and I just kind of like lost interest over time. The only reason I even fucking uh, still think about it is that occasionally you'll see an article where it says like Trump is got elected because Gamergate or something like that pops up, or like I was giving you the example where Gamergate was mentioned in my school book, and they were saying like it was really just a harassment about women and stuff like that. Like that will piss me off because I know the truth about the situation, or at least I have my own perspective rather than I know the truth.
I think you do know the truth, Lieutenant Sarge, at least in regards to that specific claim regarding Gamergate, because I've looked into this shit way too much, and
Yeah,
there's
and
no like look obviously look it's a big tens of thousands of people on the internet talking about shit. Obviously, a couple people are going to be assholes. A couple people are going to cross the line, probably go too far. But the vast majority of the people involved were not harassers.
yeah, and another thing with you writing a book, um, like as I mentioned, like it's like Gamergate shows up in school and it's incredibly one sided. That is a narrative being created in the educational sector, right? And so people grow up and they hear about Gamergate and they're just like, I've had friends that they'll be like, oh yeah, I heard about Gamergate. Wasn't it like they like were harassing feminists or something? And I'm like, oh my god, it's like all over again. So like by having a book like you're writing that challenges the narrative, as long as you can back up what you're saying and you have like evidence to what you say, like that is something that I think would be very useful in the online political world because it challenges their narrative of what they want to present as like how things went. Instead of saying gamers just hated women and they didn't want women to be in the gaming scene, it's like no, they were fucking fed up with all this stuff that was happening where like you had journalists all working with each other to promote each other's books and like all the other shit that we were talking about. The culture war aspect is something that can be focused on for sure, but it wasn't that like as I mentioned before, it wasn't just a culture war. There was like legitimate shit that was going on where people would get games that would be they didn't have the full product and then they would just get promoted regardless. So I think there's a usefulness for what you're doing with the book.
Oh, thank you. And you said earlier journalists promoting their friends' books. I assume you meant games, but I just want
Or
to clarify
games,
for the
yeah.
book.
I'm sorry.
Okay, good. No, no, you're
I'm getting
totally
my
fine.
words
I knew
jumbled.
what you meant, but I'm like, well, if I'm gonna write, I want to. It's gonna be almost verbatim, like what people say, more or less. So I just want to make sure that I clarified that for the book.
Yeah. Yeah, God, I wish I would listen to some of these old stuff before doing the interview because I'm trying to remember things from like a few years ago that I remember seeing and then I'm like I remember all these problems that were kind of popping up because guys like fucking Angry Joe used to talk about how game developers would screw over the gamers with like bad products. Like, do you remember the game Alien Isolation?
Well, yeah, we talked about that earlier quite a
No,
bit.
no,
Yeah.
not Alien Isolation. Alien Colonial Marines.
Yes, I only played it once with a friend because he had it, and we were
Like
doing
that.
co-op.
That was a game that both Angry Joe and Jim Sterling, who were both anti-GamerGate, they fucking tore that game apart for being a poor product that was using funds from Gearbox to develop. I think what was that game that was popular at the time? It was a shooter that like um, had the guy who would shoot himself in the head as the avatar um, with a gas mask on. But anyway, I can't remember the name of that game. But they took funds from that game and they took funds that was meant to be for the Alien Colonial Marines and they put it into their other games. And then they didn't get the full funding that was needed to
Oh,
make Colonial Marines.
Borderlands.
Borderlands, that's the game I was thinking of. Thank you. They took funds that was meant for the Alien Colonial Marines and they put it into Borderlands. So the Alien Colonial Marines was like halfway developed when it was released, and that was a shit show. And people should not, and people who like bought the game at full price should have got their fucking money back. You know, stuff like that was happening, and that was before GamerGate. And I remember seeing that happen, so I knew that there was ethical problems with the gaming scene that had nothing to do with feminism or any of that other shit. As I said earlier, they just kind of got intertwined when the people who were the problem actors were using their politics in the middle of it. Sorry to get on another tangent. I just was like thinking of that
No, you're
just
fine.
now.
Well, the next two questions are about GamerGate being successful, but we talked about that at length earlier, so
Yeah.
we can skip it unless you have anything else you want to add.
I think that just I saw a meme once that said that was like talking about like no, I don't even want to say that one. Never mind. I might tell you later when we're off the stream.
Sounds spicy.
Yeah, it was a spicy one.
If you could do it all over again, the GamerGate stuff that is, Lieutenant Sarge, would you?
Well, probably I would do some of it again if I was in my early 20s and I was invested in this stuff because I was what I knew at the time and what I was passionate about. I stand by a lot of what I said. I don't agree with the people that were doing the doxing and harassing, and I saw a lot of that, and I criticized that when I was doing streams. But when it came to just like calling out the bad behaviors of journalists and game developers, like I feel like that was like something that should still be done, and it still gets done. I've mentioned the movies a lot recently, but you also see it. We were talking about the anime dubs where they put GamerGate into an anime dub where it doesn't belong. It had nothing to do with the original dialogue. You still see that happening. So I think like people have a right to push back on that, and it's important that they do because it removes the power from the companies that have had control over this for so long. It's why Disney is falling apart, and you have guys like Elon Musk now proudly saying "Go fuck yourself" to like advertisers if they're trying to blackmail him, and then specifically saying Bob Iger's name when he says that. Like there has been some success in the broader I guess you could say culture war, but pushback on like companies doing this shit. And so I don't really feel bad about what I said or anything like that. I just like got disillusioned at the time because of like the infighting that would happen and the actual harassment that did occur.
What do you think of this interview project?
It's pretty good. I think the way you're doing it so far seems to be good. There's always going to be people who keep bringing up GamerGate to like talk about it as a boogeyman. So it's nice to have somebody who is saying the opposite opinion.
Some people reading this book might hold a negative view of Gamergate. Do you have anything you want to say to these people?
Um, if you take an approach similar to David Pakman and you try and hear the whole all the sides and you're still against Gamergate, that's fine. At least you took the effort to hear all the different perspectives.
Anything else you want to talk about?
That's about it, man. My coffee's running low now.
All right, well, hey,
So,
dude, thanks for doing the stream. I do want. Can I ask you one last thing? I know you're getting ready to go. It's related to the project. So for me, I've approached the project. For me personally, GamerGate was about artistic freedom and ethics in games journalism. Um, but other people obviously have different ideas. Like you said that it was about the culture war, at least in part, and that a lot of this was connected with the ethics stuff and with the creative freedom stuff. I agree that it's all like, a lot of it's interconnected. It's all intermingled together. I do agree with that, at least to an extent. And then I also I do know that there were a lot of people too who were really upset about the like microtransactions and them releasing these buggy, broken games constantly, and like expecting like, oh well, we'll patch it in like 3 months, don't worry, and like releasing these completely shitty products. And for like a lot of people, they considered that to be part of Gamergate to them. Um, so how should I talk about as I wrap this project up? How should I talk about what Gamergate was? Because
um,
it was so many things to so many people.
yeah, you ever wrote like essays for school,
Yeah,
like in college and stuff?
yeah.
Um, a large part of essays that I write for classes, it'll be like I have all my talking points and I have my thesis. Whatever your thesis is for this book, bring up everything in like a wrap up towards the end and say like like this is kind of like the conclusion that I've come to. Here's all the things that I talked about already. Now we're kind of like re bringing it back in. And like Internet Aristocrat or Medic or whatever you want to call him, Jim, when he did those videos on Gamergate initially, a large part of what he did, and also his Tumblrism videos, he would talk about something, introduce it as a topic, bring up examples of what he's saying, and then he would re-wrap it up with a final argument. And I think that's just what you need to do with your video, or your not your video, your book is just take everything that you've explored and everything as all the talking points and concepts, and then repackage it as your final argument for what you're really trying to say.
Okay. Well, hey, thank you so much, Lieutenant Sarge. Where can people find you? This part might not make it into the book, by the way. But
Oh yeah,
yeah.
if you're interested in watching me talk about games, I got my channel that's been focused on games and not politics lately because people don't want to see politics. What the hell? Okay, there it goes. You can find me at LT Sarge, LTSARGE on YouTube. One of the things I've been doing recently is I've been doing cash prize challenge streams where I challenge my friends to beat a game in under 2 hours, and if they can beat it, you get $100 cash prize. I've done about 10 of those videos so far. I'll do some more next year once I start getting some more income coming in. I like doing that as like a form of entertainment because it's like seeing if you ever watch like Dark Side Phil or any of those kind of YouTubers where they struggle at games, people like to see people playing a game that they kind of suck at. So I take games that they've never played before, or if they have, I put it on like hard mode, and then I see if that they can beat the game in under 2 hours. And so the pressure is on. If they can get the 2 hours done, they get the money. If not, the money they don't get any of the money, and I just get a video of them fucking up a bunch, and it's kind of funny. So if you like that type of stuff, um, that's my focus right now going forward. And if I do political streams, I'll probably let you know in the future, so that way you can promote it on your Discord server or something like that.
Yeah,
Also, I do have my own Discord server that's primarily focused on games and movies. Yeah, anybody who wants to join it, you're more than welcome to. we don't really talk about GamerGate in it because I don't want that to be the focus. I just want it to be like a place where anybody, regardless of their politics, could come in and hang out and talk about games and play games and shit.
Yeah, shoot me the link for sure. And you're welcome to hang out in my Discord too, and you can promote your channel, your videos and streams and stuff in the self promo channel if you want.
Sure, I'll do that right now.
All right.
So I sent you the invite to my Discord. It's not as popular as your Discord. So like it's it's just kind of people who are more friends of mine from school and from GamerGate that I am friends with. So
Well, hey, dude, thanks a lot. And I did put a link to your video, to your channel in the description here. Do you want me to put a link to your Discord too, or you're good?
sure if you want to.
All right, cool. All right, well, hey, thanks again. We're not rating anybody, just a heads up, audience, because there's no one else live. This is kind of a weird time slot. Most of the people I know in the streamer world stream at night. They don't stream during the day, so.
I gotcha. Yeah, no, before if you ever want to do another stream with me, you're more welcome to hit me up. And especially right now that I'm out of school, this would be a good time where I could probably do streams. When I'm in school, I'm so busy trying to keep up with homework and everything that I don't have as much time to focus on stuff.
Yeah,
So,
and this link you sent me for the Discord, is that the one you want me to put in the description too? That's like a permanent link?
yeah, that works.
Okay.
I can do a permanent link. Hang on.
Okay.
Oh, this is let me see. I'll do one expire after never. There we go. Generate new link. Okay, I'll copy that and I'll send it to you right now. So this is the one that won't expire, so you can
Okay.
send that to people.
Yeah, I'll put that in the video description underneath your YouTube link, so that way people can go there if they want to. Cool. Well, hey, thanks again, man. And I'll double check to make sure no one else is streaming because I do want to raid people when I can, but yeah, no.